within shouting distance. There are 4 of us here. It's 10 after 10. We have several very important items on the agenda today, including the independent monitor, the public hearing on the budget. We have presentations, and I have only 4 council members. Shape up. Let's go. Still have 4 council members. Ms. Chick, Mr. Fewer, Mr. Holden, Mr. Pacheco, Mr. Ridley Thomas, Mr. Samornich is here. Nice timing. Mr. Wax. Okay, we're up to 5. I know Mr. Fewer's in the building. I've seen him. I know Mr. Pacheco plans a presentation this morning, as does Mr. Ridley Thomas. Walters, you were the first of the people with presentations to appear. Would you like to do your presentation? Mr. Pacheco, would you like to do your presentation? Well, the meeting starts at 10 o'clock and all right, then we won't do the presentations until later. As soon as we get a quorum, we'll do the meeting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need 4 more for a quorum. Ms. Chick, Mr. Fewer, Mr. Holden, Mr. Ridley Thomas, Mr. Wax. do not have enough council members in the building to start this meeting, which is supposed to start at 10 o'clock. Hernandez is excused. Everyone else is supposed to be here. Is supposed to have been here for 25 minutes. Do I sound frustrated? I am. Soon I'll be frustrated and ill-tempered. And after a while, I'm going to have a regular full-fledged tantrum with the microphone. Not have a quorum at 10:25. Ms. Walters is going to begin with her presentations, for which I want to thank Ms. Walters and those of you who are being honored this morning. So if we could have a little quiet back here, ladies and gentlemen. The audience is quiet. How about back here? And we'll call on Ms. Walters for a presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It is with pleasure that I present certificates today to a number of constituents who have gone far beyond the norm when it comes to taking part in the activities of the 9th Council District. They have demonstrated true caring and concern, not only for their individual neighborhood and neighbors, but for the community as a whole. They take special pride in improving the quality of life in their community and have become a helpmate to the council office. Whenever there are special meetings, events, or community concerns, these are few of the many constituents my office has been able to call on for their full participation. I have enjoyed working with them over the past 10 years, and I am more than honored and privileged to present them with this token of my appreciation. And I will ask each one of them to come forward as I call their names. Mr. Richard Marshall. Mr. Marshall, when I was running for this office, council members, the first letter I received was from Mr. Richard Marshall about what was going on in the 9th District. And he has been with us ever since, every step of the way, as we have made an effort to improve the 9th Council District. He's always there. We always call upon him, and he's there doing all that he can. And we appreciate your service, Mr. Marshall, so much.
Thank you, Ms. Walters. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay up here till the others come.
Okay.
Ms. Geraldine Menino. Ms. Menino, yes. Ms. Menino is a block club captain, participates in neighborhood cleanups and building community coalitions, and we really appreciate the work that you've done. You've been outstanding.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Step over to this side. Ms. Yvonne Allen. Ms. Allen is also a tireless worker for the 9th Council District. She works for her community, she works for her church, she's a retired teacher from LAUSD, and she's just a wonderful person, and I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ladies. Thank you, ladies.
Ms. Allen, would you stay over here and we'll get a group picture. Mr. Sang Brown, is he here? Yet, Mr. Brown is not here. All right, if he comes, we will give him his certificate. And let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Brown in case he doesn't make it today. His father was very active, had lived in the community over 50 years, and was very active with us as we were working to revitalize the community. His father passed a few years ago, and he just picked up right where his father left off and has kept going. So we really appreciate that multi-generational support. Alta Brandon is not here. Mr. Brandon is not here. Okay. Mr. Brandon is one of those constituents that really looks out for community needs for everybody, works with the police department, and helps us a lot. Mr. Horace Penman, our coach as he's called. He works with children, he works with the neighborhood, he works with the community, and he works with us, and we're most appreciative, and I thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
thank you.
Okay,
Can we vote?
all right.
Thank you. Very much.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
and if you have, Ms. Elise Benford, a block club captain who works closely with LAPD, works closely with the community, and does a wonderful job in building community among her neighbors. Okay?
Ladies, please. Thank you, ladies.
Great. Ms. Margarita Jackson. Ms. Jackson, if she looks familiar to you, it's because you've seen her before. She was our Woman of the Year, and we're most grateful for all of the service that she renders to the community. A wonderful mother. She works with her children, and she works with the community, and we're very pleased to honor her again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ladies, please.
Excuse me.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay. Rose Ojeda. Ms. Ojeda is a new block club captain, and she has worked hard to clean up a drug house in her neighborhood, and we appreciate that. She's worked with LAPD, and she works well with our new Hawkins Park, seeing that things are always okay there, and we appreciate that, and thank you so much for all that you do. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Eula Germany, who's a block club captain. She has worked very hard with LAPD. She works hard to keep her community clean and safe, and we are most appreciative for all the things that she does.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hold on a minute, please. Sit here, please. Stay right there, please, on there. Thank you.
Okay. Now, has Mr. Brown or Mr. Brandon come in? No, they've not come in yet. Council members, join me in giving all of these fine community CD9 constituents a big hand for all the work they do for CD9 and the city. Okay.
Are we going back or do it here? Okay, we'll go back. Bring your friends and associates to the press room.
We are now hamstrung until, actually, if anybody wants to know what that means, I can explain it. We're expecting Ms. Chick at 11. We have no idea where Holden, Ridley Thomas, and Wax are, but we are attempting to find that out. We need at least 3 of them before we can actually hold this meeting. And at quarter to 11, we can move to adjourn for lack of a quorum. And we're up to 8. Mr. Pacheco, are you ready to do your presentation? Well, they were supposed to be here at 10 o'clock, too. Oh, yes, Mark. Mr. Ridley Thomas, you have a presentation? Please do your presentation. We would be very grateful, and so would your honoree.
coach is trying.
Are you ready? It actually would be helpful, members of the council, not only if we could arrange to show up here at the time the council meeting is supposed to begin, but especially when you have presentations, if you could encourage your honorees to show up at the beginning of the meeting, so even if we haven't all showed up, we can eventually get to the council business. This has been happening a lot lately, and I know it's hard getting here. We all got stuck in traffic this morning. I will be happy to tell the story of the Ralph's truck I got caught behind.
I need a real one. Madam President, members of the council, the name of Malcolm Overton, Stanley Thorne, Gur Duaney, Curtis Millich, Devon Rice, Eric Knight, Deshaun Curry, Corey Johnson, Larry Dillingham, Jamal Bryson, and Mackenzie Dent ought to mean something to you. And if I were to give you an aptitude test or test your knowledge of sports, you would no doubt be able to say that these are the state champions, conference champions. They are from Los Angeles Southwest Community College. They are the Cougars, and we want to welcome them as they come forward. Gentlemen, would you please come forward? On March 7th, the Los Angeles Southwest College Cougars, the men's basketball team, headed to Stockton, California to compete in the California State Community College Championship Tournament. They had not made it to the state playoffs since 1973, only to be defeated in the first round. However, this year, the Cougars were highly underestimated as contenders for state title. Coach Reggie Morris has coached this team since 1996 and had not yet won a title. Yet this year, all of that hard work paid off. This season, Coach Morris started the Cougars off on a victorious path during the first season. They won their first tournament, the first annual Intensity Classic. They went on to share the South Coast Conference title with Long Beach City College with a record of 8-2. With a season record of 24-7, the Cougars ranked 5th in the state. Coach Morris was named SEC Coach of the Year, and sophomore guard Curtis Millich earned the SEC Player of the Year award, and we should acknowledge him for that. In addition, sophomores Deshaun Curry and Eric Knight made all-conference. Sophomore center Mackenzie Dent and sophomore guard Larry Dillingham were given honorable mention. The Cougars were the only team in Los Angeles County to advance to state championship. The fact, give them a hand, I tell you. You brothers got to hold on here. The fact that Los Angeles Southwest College made it to the state tournament was no surprise to those that were a part of the path to Stockton. The Cougars are athletes with great talent and maturity. In tough games, they pulled together as a team and came out winners. The Cougars made Southwest College history, defeating number 1 ranked San Jose City College 75-66 on March the 10th in Stockton, and cinched the state championship. Deshaun Curry was named Most Valuable Player of the tournament, and Curtis Millich earned Player of the State. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the council, Madam President, please join me in saluting Coach Reggie Morris and the Los Angeles Southwest College Cougars men's basketball team, 2001 state champions, for the job well done. We wish to acknowledge the assistant coaches, Dwayne Poole and Mauricio Linares, and of course we pay tribute to the leadership of the president of Southwest College, Dr. Bonnie James, who I will ask to come and share a few words with us at this time, followed by Coach Morris. Dr. James.
Good morning, Madam President, the Councilman Ridley Thomas, and to all of the council members. We are very, very pleased to be here this morning. These young men accomplished something that no one thought could be accomplished given where we began. Not only are they athletes, they are student athletes. What it's all about in community colleges and in education period is that young men and women must accomplish their goals, and those goals stand out for education. And these young men have accomplished that as well. Many of them are going on to, in fact, all of them are going on to 4-year colleges and or universities. And I think that that is outstanding for these young men. We're pleased to be here this morning. Pleased that you've honored us. Thank you very much, Councilman. Thank you.
Coach Morris.
I really appreciate the accomplishments that my team has made, and I really appreciate the awards that we've been receiving. It's been a real thrill for me and our school and our community to be acknowledged in such a positive way. I give all the credit and glory to my team. The guys behind me played like champions really all year long, and just came down to the end where we had to show that we were true champions and win that state tournament. Along with my president, I really appreciate this award or this honor, and I thank everyone for making it happen. Thank you.
So on the occasion of winning the 2001 California Community State Basketball Championship, the City of Los Angeles congratulates the Los Angeles Southwest College Cougars basketball team on this most deserving accomplishment and extends to you our very best wishes for success in all your future endeavors. And this is signed by all members of the Los Angeles City Council. Sir. How you want to do this, Butcher? We'll do it in the back, all right? John, you want to take him to the back?
I noticed they're all taller than you, Mark. Congratulations, guys. Good work.
And good-looking young man. Give him another
Yes,
round of
that too.
applause, would you? Madam
If we
President.
appoint them all to the council, we could actually get this meeting going.
We could. You gentlemen ready to vote? An additional presentation, Madam President, if you would. I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to acknowledge the fine work and long-term contribution of Dean Ernestine Thomas Robertson, who I'd like to come forward. Give her a hand, will you, Dean Ernestine Thomas Robertson? Dean Thomas Robertson has spent 12 years in education administration at the Los Angeles Southwest College, serving as Associate Dean and presently Dean of Academic Affairs. She served 10 years as Professor of Political and International Relations and is the recipient of the Esteemed Instructor Award. Los Angeles Southwest College Associated Student Award, Organization Administrator Award, and has been nominated 6 times for Outstanding Women in America. Dean Robertson is chairperson of the Task Force on International Relations and Foreign Policy for the Black Women's Forum and has served as chairperson for Lusaka Sister City. Her commitment to the well-being of young adults is most evident in her work to improve the plight of African American males, as her investment has been made clear through a range of activities, not the least of which is the activity that she first organized entitled the African American Man-Child Conference on the campus of Southwest College. Now, in its 8th year, the conference is recognized as one of the premier convocations for public discourse on issues of importance to African American males and their families. So it's with that in mind that I would ask you to please join me in honoring Dean Ernestine Robertson Thomas Robertson, for valuable contributions to Southwest Community College and to the city of Los Angeles at large. Dean? We affectionately refer to her as Dean Steen. Have a word. We'll take a picture.
President Galanter, Honorable Mark Ridley Thomas, and honorable members of the council, thank you very much. I'm indeed honored, surprised by this recognition this morning. Let me say, if I may echo our president, Dr. James, that at Los Angeles Southwest College, we strive to produce servant leaders like those of you who are on the city council are today. We strive also to produce scholars, that which we profess that we are. We work also diligently at LA Southwest College to produce not just servant leaders and scholars, but also the soldiers on the front line of the social, economic, political, and business entities of our society. And we also work diligently to, in our own way, produce our own saints, as you've seen in our basketball team this morning. Saints in the sense that we teach them to do the right thing for the right reason and let the rest fall where it may. I would like to thank all of you, including my Honorable Mark Ridley Thomas, for this recognition this morning once again, and for those of you, including the coach, the basketball team, and Dr. James, who have enabled me and allowed me to do the work that I do in the best interest of our community and the college that we all serve. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley Thomas. We now have 9 members present, and I have been informed that 3 of our colleagues have deigned to arrive an hour late for the meeting. So in another 7 or 8 minutes, we should pick up at least one more person, and then we can actually hold this meeting. In the meantime, are you ready, Mr. Pacheco, for a presentation?
Madam President, hello? Okay, Madam President, colleagues, at this point, because we're doing what they call a stretch of the show,
Yes, but only for a few more minutes.
then that's all I need is 3.
Okay.
So at this point, let me first of all begin by doing a little video presentation for our honorees. And we will have that first, and then I will come back up and do the presentation. So let's see the video first for the state of Jalisco, our honorees for today.
Jalisco is one of the leading states in Mexico in terms of production and economic participation. And a number of its industrial sectors rate first in the country in volume and production quality. Jalisco is a land of lakes, rivers, waterfalls, and mountains. Its state's medium-sized cities combine the rich historical traditions of Mexico with contemporary modern life. Most visited tour- A first-class expressway connects Guadalajara to the port of Manzanillo. Just over 3.
Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley Thomas, Forrest, Wax, Walters, and Galanter, 10 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
So at last, 4 minutes after 11, this is the meeting of the Los Angeles City Council that meets at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It is May 18th, 2001. We're being viewed on the city's cable channel, Channel 35, and we are also available by council phone. The chair recognizes Mr. Pacheco for a brief presentation.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me bring up the Secretary of Economic Development from the state of Jalisco, Abraham Gonzalez Ulleda. We are here to recognize the state of Jalisco. This is a resolution for the state of Jalisco, and it's for their great work and their dedication to partnership with the community of Ball Heights and the city of Los Angeles. As many of you know, Mariachi Plaza is located in Ball Heights, and during the last couple of years, there have been numerous efforts to beautify Mariachi Plaza. In 1998, the state of Jalisco, after working with us to bring the Kiosco from Jalisco, gave us 15 benches, one for each municipality in Jalisco, ornate wrought iron benches to complement the beautiful Kiosco that we had received from the state. So on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, I want to present this resolution. And unfortunately, originally scheduled to be here with us was the governor of the state of Jalisco, but he unfortunately was called back to duty in the state of Jalisco to do work with President Fox, and his name was Francisco Ramirez Acuna. So let me just present this to the individual representing the state of Jalisco, Abraham Gonzalez Ulleda, the Secretary of Economic Development. This is a small token of appreciation for that generous donation to Mariachi Plaza. And so on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, we hereby declare May 18th State of Jalisco Recognition Day in appreciation of your generosity and support for the dissemination of mariachi music and Mariachi Plaza. Thank you. Want to do it right now?
Muy buenas tardes. Con su permiso, a nombre del licenciado Francisco Javier Ramírez Acuña, gobernador constitucional del estado de Jalisco, quiero agradecer al señor Richard Riordan, alcalde de la ciudad de Los Ángeles, al concejal señor Nick Pacheco y al cabildo de la ciudad, así como al gobierno de California, por este reconocimiento que a nombre del gobernador constitucional del estado de Jalisco tengo el honor de recibir.
Good afternoon. In the representation of Mr. Francisco Ramirez Acuña, Governor of the State of Jalisco, I want to thank Mr. Richard Riordan, Mayor of Los Angeles, the councilman member, Mr. Nick Pacheco, the City Council, and also the California State for this recognition that at the name of the constitutional governor, I receive this recognition.
Este es un reconocimiento al esfuerzo que Jalisco ha realizado en los últimos años por consolidarse como un estado moderno y vanguardista, un estado que día a día se construye sobre las bases de un real estado de derecho y donde se viven los valores de la democracia.
This is a recognition to the effort that Jalisco has done in the last years to enforce a contemporary and modern state, a state that day by day we build on strong bases, a state of law where we live the values of democracy.
Es también un reconocimiento al trabajo arduo que en conjunto han desarrollado nuestros estados en los últimos años en un ambiente de respeto y cordialidad mutua y que hoy se refleja en un intenso intercambio económico, comercial, cultural, educativo y deportivo, por mencionar algunos, y que son muestra de la gran riqueza que nuestro futuro que tenemos en común.
It is also recognition of the hard work that together we have developed in our states in the last years, in an environment of respect and mutual cordiality, and that today we look in exchangeable economic, commercial, cultural, education, and sports. Just to mention some of this is just a little sample of the richness of our common future.
Hoy es evidente que la interrelación entre las naciones como parte de la globalización debe tener como fundamento del diálogo y el consenso. Solo así se podrá lograr los acuerdos económicos y sociales que permitirán reforzar los cimientos de los que será la convivencia humana del siglo que comienza.
Today is the interdependency between our nation. As a part of the globalization, it is necessary that the constant communication and agreement and consensus, only that way we will be able to accomplish economic and global agreements that will allow us to reinforce the basis of the human interaction in the century which has started.
En los últimos años, la relación bilateral entre Jalisco y California ha tomado un dinamismo importante. Es su país principal destino de nuestros productos. Aquí llega el 76.4% de las exportaciones jaliscienses, que en su total equivalen a 14.700 billones de dólares. Es decir, a esta nación exportamos productos por un total de 11.232 billones de dólares.
In the past years, the bilateral relations between Jalisco and California has taken an important change. It is a principal country, the destiny of our products. We export 76.4% of our products to this country. Our total export equals $14,702,000. To this nation, we export products totaling a total of $11,232,000.
Aunado a eso, la comunidad jalisciense en este país y particularmente en la ciudad de Los Ángeles es muy importante, ya que en los Estados Unidos radica aproximadamente 2 millones de jaliscienses dispersos en diferentes comunidades de la Unión Americana, de los cuales 750,000 radican en California, principalmente en Los Ángeles y su periferia, y según Gallup, cuentan con un ingreso per cápita de $12,444 y colaboran con 24,000 billones de dólares anuales al PIB de la Unión Americana.
Adding to that, the Jalisco community in this country, generally in the city of Los Angeles, is very important. Keeping in mind that in the United States, approximately 2 million people from Jalisco live throughout different communities in the United States, in which 750,000 live in California, especially in Los Angeles and its surrounding areas. According to Gallup, they count with an income of $12,444 per capita, contribute $24 million annually to the GDP of the United States.
Todas estas realidades son un factor que debemos aprovechar al máximo, ya que son el punto de partida que nos permitirá establecer los nuevos paradigmas que definirán las relaciones entre nuestros estados.
All these realities are factors which we should enjoy to the maximum, since they are the point which permit us to establish the paradigms which define our relations with our states.
En el gobierno de Jalisco estamos muy interesados en estrechar los vínculos con el estado de California. Estamos interesados en que ustedes estén cerca de Jalisco, que sean partícipes de las grandes transformaciones que en los últimos años Jalisco experimenta. Muchas gracias.
In the government of Jalisco, we are very interested in stretching the ties with the state of California. We are interested in keeping you close to Jalisco. We want you to be participants of this good transformation, which in the last years Jalisco has experienced. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. We will go back to the press.
Muchas gracias to both of you. All right. We have a quorum. We are ready to begin. Let's go with the first item.
Approval of the minutes.
Without objection, the minutes are approved.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
And those two.
Before starting the regular agenda, there's a few items to be continued. Item number 2, request from Council District 14, Los Angeles Housing Department, have that matter continued till Tuesday, May 22nd.
I think that's an excellent idea. Item 2 is now continued.
Item number 3, a request that matter be continued till June 26th.
Okay, any objection? Item 3 is continued to June 26th.
And item number 11, the closed session item, a request that matter be continued till Tuesday, May 22nd.
All right, item 11, which is just a report anyway, is going to be continued until Tuesday. And that brings us
To item number 1, which is the mayor's proposed budget, there's a committee report.
All right, let me just explain, remind everybody how this works. The mayor has released his budget, and the committee has released its report. And, hold on, I need the cards for this one. You can have the rest of them. I did it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I already did that. So what we're going to do today is have a public hearing on the budget. We will then continue the item, including the public hearing, to a special meeting on Monday, at which time the council will be, at 10 o'clock, I hope, will be taking up the actual committee report and the budget itself. So I'm going to ask you, if you speak today, to plan on not speaking again on Monday. But really the choice is yours. I have so far 3 people who have asked to be heard on the budget item, and I will call them in the order in which I received the cards. First, Barry Reed, then Joan Lux, and then Camille Lombardo. Mr. Reed. There.
Madam President, members of the council, good morning. My name is Barry Reed. I'm the executive director of Mulholland Tomorrow. I'm here today to speak in favor of an item that I understand was proposed by the Department of City Planning and then not part of this recommendation you have before you today on a tie vote is the way I understood it went. This recommendation by planning, proposal by planning, was for the addition of 2 additional personnel to the planning department staff, particularly 1 city planner to assist in the implementation of the Mulholland Scenic Parkway specific plan, and an additional public counter person for the, as I understand, the Valley office of the planning department. I think that these 2 positions warrant your consideration, and if possible, warrant being reinstated into the budget. These, particularly the planner for the Mulholland Specific Parkway, this is the balance point. This is the fulcrum position for the success of this specific plan. This is the person on whom the success of the plan rests, and we believe that that needs to be increased. Over the past few years, as development in the hillsides has increased greatly, the current planners in that position have been basically overwhelmed. They need help. They need your help to provide additional manpower for that position to implement that plan. This will not only save the Department of City Planning from being overwhelmed, but will also, every hour that person spends, that new person spends on the specific plan, saves probably hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars on the part of homeowners, property owners, builders, and others who are interested in the plan. So I urge, if it's possible, for that those positions to be reinstated into the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joan Lux.
Good morning. Joan Lux. I'm Vice President of the Federation of Hillside and Canyon Associations, and I am speaking on the same item that just the previous speaker did. And this item and the request for 2 additional staff people is really smart business. Developers that come to the counter have delays because we don't have the proper staffing. This is on both sides of the aisle an important movement, because if we do the proper research when a package comes in that may be incomplete, doing the foundation at the beginning will help facilitate it when it's been approved or has to be redesigned and goes on to building and safety. Building and safety has the burden of making sure that what's been approved is in fact what's built. I personally have found over 30 homes that have gone through and been built or partially built that in fact really should have gone through the Mulholland Design Review Board. This is a question of being able to connect the dots, to have what's been approved actually and what should be approved and the spirit of the specific plan honored. Right now, with all of the building that's happening, at least in the Santa Monica Mountains area, the most difficult lots are the ones that remain because they are the most severe slopes, and so the most attention needs to be paid, and the initial work and the review of these packages is paramount, and also good service to a developer that wants to expedite his request. I ask that you consider this item that came through the Budget Ad Hoc 3 and 3, and that you permit the addition of the 2 additional staffers on behalf of improved visibility and beautiful homes in the hills, and everybody that drives the Santa Monica Mountains and appreciates good design. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Camille Lombardo.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam President. Honorable council members and very helpful city staff members. My name is Camille Lombardo. I'm the executive director of Friends of the Observatory, the support group for Griffith Observatory. I am here to ask you to consider a request for a motion for a generous contribution to the renovation and planning and expansion project of Griffith Observatory in order to match a request made by state representatives. I know this is admittedly coming very late in your budgetary process, but this is new information that we were not able to submit to you any earlier. For those of you who are not as aware as some of you are, Friends of the Observatory is working very closely with the Department of Recreation and Parks and other city officials on the $63 million renovation and expansion of Griffith Observatory. We currently have secured 68% of that money. We have an urgent situation that's developing this year in order to stay on time and on budget with the process. We need to raise $10 million in order to award the construction projects in this coming fiscal year. We had a placeholder in there and had requested and been working with Speaker Hertzberg and additional legislators for a $5 million state request. In our visits with the state, they have asked us, how is the city supporting this? We have had to tell them that while there are Proposition A and Proposition K voter-supported initiatives supporting this to the tune of $28 million, there is no direct city funding allocated to Griffith Observatory for the capital improvements. There have been no capital improvements to the observatory in its 66-year history. It's a pretty amazing statement, as I'm seeing some of the expressions on your faces. So I could go on. I will just leave it at this brief statement and encourage you to support a motion that will be coming in front of you asking for some funds, and I appreciate your indulgence in this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have today, so let me remind you, as I announced at the beginning, we're going to continue this item to our special meeting on Monday. Excuse me. The hearing remains open, so if there are additional people who have not spoken today who wish to speak on Monday, we'll hear from you then, and the item will go over to Monday's agenda. Mr. Feuer, did you feel compelled to say something now?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to rise merely to say, colleagues, the process has been very extensive. We have a great committee that had a chance to review the details of the budget. Our colleagues, Ms. Walters, Ms. Mizakowski, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Pacheco, and Mr. Hernandez. The hearings lasted for a number of days. They'll culminate on Monday when at 9 o'clock we will go through about 134 specific items that emerged from the ad hoc committee on the budget. Ideally, we'll proceed to go through those at a good pace. And we'll reach final conclusions. I just wanted to note the process. Again, it's Monday at 9 o'clock, as has been the case historically, and certainly last year when we did this. We'll proceed item by item and get through it. I also want to note, Madam President, the extraordinary efforts on the part of the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office and the OR's office, both of whom did remarkable work. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay, item 1 is continued to Monday's special meeting. We've already continued items 2 and 3. Because we are now past the time that we adjourned on Wednesday, I'm going to suggest, unless there's strenuous objection, that we go next to item 13, which is the independent monitor item. We have held hearings on this previously. However, we do have 3 people who have asked to be heard. So I need a motion to hear from them. And then we will hear from the... Did I hear a motion? Okay, thank you. Ms. Mizakowski moves. Which one is that? Yeah. Okay, so I have 3 people who've asked to be heard: Augustine Sabada, Anita Gutierrez, And Lorena Amarillo, sorry.
Hello, Madam Chairman. With our consent decree coming up at last for the hiring of the monitor, this city is at a critical juncture. For the last three decades or longer, the city has been in the control, at the mercy of the criminal justice establishment. And many of you who are here as councilmen have sought the support of that establishment, specifically with regard to the Police Protective League's help in elections. And it has been reflected in the way a lot of you had voted in the past to not deal with these issues. In 1993, we, the people of Los Angeles, spoke. We demanded police reform. 8 years later, we're still waiting. And we know that there are pressures brought. The city attorney, the police chief, the mayor were against this. And we see it within our election for mayor, how pivotal this is. We see out in the community police conspiracies to support criminal activities such as drug dealing, such as assassination of innocent children. And we have documentation on all that. We are waiting for these people to be hired. We don't care which agency it is of the two that are the finalists, but we want this to be implemented. It was supposed to be done, I believe, on March 1st. Here we are in May, almost the end of May, and it's still going on. Why is there such foot dragging on this issue? Or is everybody lining up to see how some of these contested elections and which way the Police Protective League is going to act, or what?
Well,
how much time do I have? Do you have a...
No, actually, I need for you to finish up because we actually want to try to do it today.
Sure.
And I want to do it while we still have a quorum here.
Usually you have 3 minutes, and most places you go, they have a little light there tell you
Yeah, but
how
we
much
don't.
time you have.
We don't do
Okay,
it that
I'm
way. And
almost...
actually, we've already had a hearing on, but I wanted you to have another chance.
I'm almost through, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
And we want not that this thing be carried over, like it said that it might happen within the article that covered this issue, but to have an action taken today, a vote on either one of the two, and we need to move forward on police reform to stop the abuses, the corruption within the LAPD and all of the criminal justice establishment for that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gutierrez.
I will act as translator for Ms. Gutierrez.
Fine, thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Mariana Gutiérrez. Yo quiero hablar a favor de emplear el monitor para el decreto de consenso entre la ciudad de Los Ángeles, el Departamento de Justicia. Les quiero dar un ejemplo.
Okay. Ms. Gutierrez wants to speak in favor of the hiring of the monitor to implement the consent decree, and she wants to give some examples of why.
Y también quiero hablar de mi hijo otra vez, porque yo no voy a dejar de parar hasta que se haga justicia. Y aquí traigo todas estas personas son las que iban a ir a la corte, pero el gobierno, la FBI o no sé quién los amenazaba y todos se fueron, se cambiaron de lugar y no, nadie vive ahorita de estas personas.
Okay, déjame traducir. I want to talk again about the killing of my son, the injustice that happened there, and I have here some pictures of witnesses that would have come to the trial, but they were intimidated, whether it was the FBI or other police agencies, and these people were not available when the trial that was held on my son. Sí, adelante.
Esta señora que ustedes ven aquí, ella miró también todo y su esposo cuando me mataron a mi hijo, que aquí el concejal Mike Hernández, él la tenía también en la casa de la comunidad de ahí de Lincoln Heights, y no, ellos ya no quisieron ir a la corte porque según le dieron un trabajo al esposo de esta persona. No sé si quién se lo daría de la ciudad, pero le dieron un trabajo y ya no quiso ir la esposa ni el esposo a la corte conmigo.
This picture of this lady that I'm showing here, she worked at the Unity House there on East Lake Street in Lincoln Heights. Ms. Gutierrez says she does not know who hired this lady. Her and her husband were both witnesses to the brutal murder of her son. And after they received the job there at the Unity House, they no longer were willing to testify at the trial, the civil trial of her son against the city.
Porque estas personas, ellas también miraron todo cuando mataron a mi hijo. Y fueron los primeros, el esposo de ella fue el primero que se enojó con la policía y fue el primero que les atacó y lo llevaron a la cárcel, lo golpearon y lo llevaron a la cárcel y después ya no quiso ir a la corte.
This lady's husband was the first person to witness the killing of her son, and he went and yelled at the police. Then they got him and beat him down and took him to jail, and after that he would not testify in favor of this lawsuit she filed against the city of Los Angeles.
El año pasado también los policías, unas personas que vendían droga ahí enfrente de mi casa siempre traían problemas conmigo y yo una vez que ellos me mandaron a una señora para que con un cuchillo para que me matara o me picara, no sé. Entonces yo me tuve que defender. Y la policía me llevó a la cárcel y a la muchacha esa no, porque la protegen más a la estación de policía de Hallenberg, protegen más a las personas que hacen daño, que venden droga, que ni a mí siempre me están molestando. Hasta la fecha no me han dejado de molestar, siempre tiran la luz a mi casa, siempre dicen cosas, nomás en mi casa y en mi casa.
About a year ago, Ms. Gutierrez had a person sent to her house by some people from across the street that there was an open crack house that was there. They sent this lady to attack her, to stab her. She came with a knife, and she had to defend herself. She was taken to jail, and the person who assaulted her nothing was done to her. This has happened all this time. She has been harassed. Recently, the police stopped in front of her house, I think it was last week, and shined the light into her.
hermano le dijo aquí el concejal Mike Hernández y también el otro concejal que era a Richard Alatorre, ahí él habló con los canales y también dijo que la familia Gutiérrez estaba estúpida si creíamos que le íbamos a ganar a la policía. Pues yo pienso que ellos no deberían de haber juzgado a mi hijo porque ellos no lo conocían. ¿Por qué dijeron que era un pandillero? Ahora si yo quiero que ellos me comprueben si era pandillero, porque según tengo entendido que en cada estación de policía tienen libros de los pandilleros y ahí tienen su retrato. Quiero que me enseñen a mi hijo en ese libro de los pandilleros.
I want to reiterate that my son was never a gang member. Mr. Alatorre, former councilman, and the current councilman there, they took sides against my son and judged him. My son was never arrested, never was in juvie. In each police station, they have books that show the active gang members in the different divisions, and she wants them to show her the book with a picture of her son. He was never a gang member. And she feels that's a great injustice. She will fight against these injustices that happened to her son and that are happening to her now.
All right, thank you. I have one more person who wants to be heard, so I need to ask you to finish up.
Okay.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Ms. Jaramillo.
Good morning, everybody. This is my first time here, and today I'm here to support and asking for the independent monitor for the consent decree between LA and U.S. Justice Department, because it's extremely necessary, because the police department is out of control promoting hate violence. I was pregnant in 1990 and I was abused by police, okay? And I hired a lawyer, but the lawyer made me sign some paper. He made me sign certainly paper, and I give up all my rights. And now I know it was wrong, and I know I was abused, and now God will continue coming. Also, it's very important for us, Latino, the neighborhood site councils don't have the face of our community. Taxpayers, Latino citizens are excluded out of these councils. We don't have any notice, any information, nothing at all. We don't access of that information, and that's wrong, because we're paying taxes. We having houses, we having business in the area. If the site councils don't let us participate, we're going to sue the city, okay? Probably my English is not that good. I'm Latina, and I've been abused for this, from police, and I'm not going to forget this. Before, I wasn't able to speak any English at all. It's why the police wrote a wrong report and everything about me. Now, probably I will back with that case. Also, I want to congratulate Ed Reyes because he wins the election. And I want to thank Mike Hernandez. He did a wonderful job representing and speak up for our community. I'm really proud of him. And we're going to support Ed Reyes just with support Mike Hernandez. Thank you.
Thank you, and your English is just fine.
Well, I try. When the police
You're doing very
abused
well.
me, I didn't speak any English, that's why.
And well, you seem to have turned it around. All right, that closes the public hearing. We're now going to hear from our chief legislative analyst and the rest of the team regarding the independent monitor. And let me call to your attention, we have a motion, which is the motion now circulated?
No, it's subject to...
Yeah, I saw it. I signed it,
Okay.
actually. Okay, just I want everybody to know that there is a motion on your desk, which is what they're going to lead up to. Okay, go for it.
As indicated last meeting, first, interesting that today is Friday and this is item 13, but other than that, moving...
But we continued 2 and 3, so it's really, and 11, so it's not
That's
really
good.
13.
We have been involved for some time under the direction provided by the council to, we went out to request for proposal, received 19 proposals back, interviewed 14 of those, got to a short list, and have been working with the Department of Justice on a mutual recommendation to the court on an independent monitor. And what we have come up with is a selection of Kroll and Associates as the primary monitor, and using the public management resources as a front-end review and preparation of the method and evaluation criteria for the consent decree. We have been concerned from the beginning that we have very clear guidelines relative to how we are going to be judged, whether we're in compliance or not with a consent decree, and we felt that public management resources had the strongest experience in that field. In discussing this all with the Department of Justice, the Kroll and Associates were the firm that we thought had the best ability to carry out the independent monitor role for the city's consent decree. This was based on their law enforcement expertise, their basic infrastructure of the size of the firm, the fact that they had been involved in being independent monitors on consent decrees as well. That's also the case with the public management group in San Antonio. They are the consent decree monitors for both Pittsburgh and New Jersey. So we are before you requesting approval of this Kroll and Associates as the primary independent monitor, and this additional role by Public Management Incorporated for the criteria. At this point in time, we believe the Department of Justice is in concurrence with the selection. We will be presenting to you next week the contracts for both firms. They're not quite completed. We've been working primarily with the Department of Justice, not the individual contractors. The contractors have only in the last 24 hours got a glimpse of perhaps of a draft contract and see what their response is. It's been basically, the basic timetable on this has been working with the Department of Justice to see if there was an opportunity to have both sides agree on a selection. And I think we're at that point. We would request your approval today. We have to report back to court on Monday on the status of this. We have gone through the process as we understood it. We understand that this is the 24th hour and the 365th day and all the incumbent problems that creates for this body. But we believe that of all of the ones we have looked at, that this combination of Kroll as being the primary independent monitor and the public management providing this overall view of how we're going to be evaluated is the best interest of the city and its citizens, and would so recommend, and I think we're unanimous.
Okay, I have so far 2 council members who want to be heard. Do the rest of you want to say something first? Do you want to just, now we're up to 4. I knew it. Okay, Mr. Feuer.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually am going to adopt an approach that I don't usually like, because I want to begin with a question that there won't be time in my 3 minutes to answer, but I think everybody wants to hear more information. I think we need a much more extensive discussion about the qualifications of the team selected and the reasons for that selection and the reasons for a different approach, the reasons why this selection is preferable to number 2. And I hope that at the end of my remarks you'll be able to do that. Comparing, by the way, the RFP's goals with the qualifications of the team. I do want to express a couple concerns. The 2 teams that are the top selections don't, unless I misunderstand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because there's sort of been a veil of silence around us. We don't really know a lot of the details. But I think the 2 top teams don't contain or aren't at least deeply involved with local people. They're from elsewhere. And while there are advantages to an outside look at the department, there are also some genuine advantages in having people involved in the monitoring process be deeply familiar with Los Angeles, with the police department here, not just policing in general. So that's a concern I wanted to raise and get some reaction to. I was concerned a little bit in a prior discussion that it was said, and I don't even know enough about the content of the teams competing to know whether this implicates one team or another, but it was said that anybody who had had any experience suing the city or part of an organization suing the city should not be qualified to do this. And if I mischaracterize that remark, please tell me. But if that were an approach taken, it would trouble me. Because as I said in a prior debate on this issue, it depends why they sued, what the issues were, who was involved, because sometimes the city makes mistakes. And indeed, lawsuits help rectify those mistakes. Other times, litigators against the city are out for blood and don't do the taxpayers any good. It depends why they've been involved and on what level. So I'd like to hear more about the qualifications in some depth, how they compare to the RFP, why number 1 is really better than number 2 in a little bit of detail, or if we have documentation on this, that would be useful as well. I don't want to unduly lengthen this meeting, but all we have before us is the single-page motion moving the selection of Kroll without more. And it's really not adequate to give the council a sense that we're exercising informed judgment.
Well, that's your 3 minutes. So how about if we get all the questions on the table and then you try to answer all of them? Mr. Hernandez.
Mr. Deaton, you asked me earlier if this was part of the 85 or the 15%. I got to let you know right now it's part of the 15%. Members of the council, if I was asked to vote right now this minute, my vote would clearly be no. And I'm making that statement not lightly. I have never had to make a decision with as little of information that's being given to me today. And I think the decision I'm making is really one of the most important decisions I've made as a council member. And I'm accustomed to having material to make decisions on, being briefed, understanding throughout a process things that are going on. And in this one, just listening to Mr. Fuhr's questions, I think he kind of has had as much information as I've had. I just find it hard to believe I'm here. And I think that because I'm here, it's fair for me to share with you where I stand. And that is that at this moment, I'm a no vote. And I tried to convey that message earlier so that I could get some understanding of what was going on, who we're selecting, why we're selecting them. I just can't make an affirmative decision on what's before me. I'm real concerned about past track records. I'm real concerned of what their history is about. I'm real concerned as to how the committee got to where it's at. And Mr. Deaton, I'm just trying to be fair when I make the statement. I have no idea. I have no idea. And so it's frustrating to be in this position. I just need to say that. And quite frankly, I do have the opportunity to say yes or no. And today, because of the way it's being presented to me, I don't think it makes sense for me to say yes. And I didn't put us in this position. I think our negotiating team has put us in this position. And that's all I have to say right now. I'm going to wait to hear more information.
Good idea. Ms. Mizikowski.
I think it's appropriate to have the people at the table answer some of these questions before we continue to discuss it. There is clear expression of discomfort around the council, and we need to know more about, without names, why some did not make it to the final group, whether or not, Mr. Deaton, you indicated that you believe there was consensus at this table. We haven't even heard that. I need to hear that. We need to hear from the city attorney, from the police department, from the mayor's office, all of which came to this from a different perspective, that there is consensus. And we also need a little bit more discussion about whether or if or why. I think, Mr. Deaton, you indicated that there was delay or concern, or this was took longer than we had wanted it to take because of the Department of Justice. I'd like to know why or how that statement can be supported. Members of the council, there's no question that we are not comfortable with some aspects of this, but this committee, this working group, has come back and done exactly what we instructed them to do last December. We instructed, the council action was authorizing the mayor's office and the CLA to negotiate the contract for the independent monitor as required by the consent decree, which is spelled out in detail, and present the contract to the city back by March 1st. We've lost some time, we've lost some focus, because this motion was brought in and this action was taken by the council within days of the council having spent an incredible amount of time going in detail over the consent decree, word by word by word, line by line. We knew what that consent decree said, we knew what we said we were going to do, and we said hire a monitor per this recommendation to just monitor the situation in agreement with DOT. We said that at the time. We did 9 other things: authorize teams to go forward, authorize implementation, provide money for the police department to start the implementation. We knew back in December where we were going and how we were getting there. Unfortunately, because of the delay of time, we're not focused again on what the most important decision was of this council, which was the consent decree and was the detail. There's no question I think council needs more information about how this group and DOJ went about the selection and the type of criteria that were caused these 2 recommendations to come to the top of the heap. But we need to know that, and need to know with a little more detail than we've heard, so let's see if these folks can give us some information.
Well, we also have 3 more council members who I think have questions. Ms. Chick, who is one of them, asked me to just convey to you that her question is, at some point you need to explain what the impact would be if we do not reach a decision today. Ms. Walters and Mr. Wax also both have questions. Ms. Walters.
Yes, and it may be explained by their presentation, but I'm concerned about the decision to choose two firms. And the one firm that seems to have the lesser role in terms of time, I'm concerned that they will develop criteria and procedures and methodology by which the other firm must conduct their work, and that seems to me to be highly unusual. And I need the panel to respond to that. I don't know why we don't do one firm for everything.
Let me just direct on that item. The public management resources, having done it for Pittsburgh and for New Jersey, in our review of all the proposals, we thought that their methodology was the best. They explained what they were doing, how they were going to do it, and showed that they had done it before. What we've worked out is a contract with them, and their contract with them is actually with the Department of Justice, us, and Kroll, although we're paying. But the reporting relationship is through Kroll, and to assist Kroll in developing those criteria with the two firms together, using their expertise. We think that their methodology will, my personal concern about is that I believe the city can perform on this consent decree if it is clear what we have to do and how we're going to be evaluated. If we mess up the front end, we will have 5 years of problems. So I'm very concerned that the very first go-around, that it is very clear to the police department and all concerned exactly what conformance means. In other words, when you have been evaluated and I believe that when that is clear and put before the police department, we will in fact perform and do it.
Let me get your mic back on. Ms. Walters still has some time here.
All right. The Kroll Company, by your remarks, am I to infer that they have never done this before? They've never established a criteria or methodology by which they would do this kind of work that they're going to be asked to do? And I don't know anything about either one of them.
No, I understand.
I'm trying to understand this.
I understand. There are only 3 other cities, I believe, that have, other than ourselves, that have consent decrees on this particular aspect, this particular kind of consent decree. The public management has, as a part of their firm, both the monitor for Pittsburgh and New Jersey, and also the monitor for Steubenville, Ohio. So that firm is the only one that has, quote unquote, the expertise, any expertise.
So why do we have Kroll?
I'm just going to say that Kroll does have expertise in consent decree, being a monitor for the consent decree, for example, the election for the Teamsters. And I, in that process, set up criteria for evaluation in that instance, but entirely different.
Well, doing something with the Teamsters is surely not as important as doing a consent decree with the police department. And it's a totally different kind of work. The Teamsters don't get sued if they mess up a delivery, or they may get sued, but
Well, actually,
nobody dies.
Actually, they
and
got-
these are things that are before us with respect to the police department.
I won't comment on that, but they did get fined for not doing things correctly.
Well, that has to do with campaign contributions and that sort of thing. But I want to know why Kroll is in here. Is this something the mayor has done, or what's going on here?
No, I think that both firms, I believe that everybody at this table, that these two firms was the number 1 and number 2 firm for everybody at this table.
Okay, who is number 1 and who's number 2?
Okay. I think
And if we had a number 1, why do we have number 2 in here at all? not knowing which ones you've identified as number 1 and 2, but I assume that you identified public management as number 1.
You're very good. The,
You
But as
gave me a very clear picture.
But, as I indicated early in the process, is that we were reaching a mutual understanding on a person to recommend to the judge with the Department of Justice.
And
Our concerns have been met with this criteria, et cetera, with the inclusion of the public management firm. And we, with that criteria and that methodology in place, I think everybody at this table is comfortable with Kroll being the independent monitor. It is the reason for Mr. Ginger's involvement in this process is that he has experience in exactly what you're saying, which is looking at a police department, deciding how it should be evaluated, et cetera. We believe with that front-end information being provided and worked with the police department and Kroll, that we are happy and recommend Kroll taking it from that point forward. And we are, and I don't have any hesitation at that. And
well,
this is not,
consensus can be gained in more than one way. And is it consensus because one party determined that they would not play, would not be part of it if number 2 was not in here? It sounds that way.
I think that there was a mutual understanding that both parties got what they needed, having both 1 and 2 involved.
I've seen, I've seen a number of things around here where the mayor's office has elbowed their way into things and demanded that they're going to pick up their marbles and go home, or it's their way or no way.
Okay.
And
Ms.
this is far
Walters?
too important. My time is up.
Your time is up. Now, you're messing up my system. I'm trying to get all the questions.
I would
from
just
the-
like to
from
make
the
one.
I know, but from the people who haven't spoken yet on the table, then have you respond, as Ms. Mizikowski suggested, to everything that people have asked. I have 3, well, counting Ms. Chick's question, which we've already asked you to include, which is what's the effect if we delay. If you want to add anything, okay. Mr. Wax hasn't spoken yet. Mr. Holden hasn't spoken yet. Mr. Fewer and Ms. Mizikowski both want to be heard again so far. So what I'd like to do is give Mr. Wax and Mr. Holden a chance, if they have questions they want you to address, to do that now, because I know we're going to have subsequent discussion. And then you just wanted to respond to the end of
Yes.
Ms. Walters' question. Do that.
I just so it's clear, there's nobody in this room that doesn't know that on a regular basis I don't always agree with the mayor's office or the mayor. I want you to know in this particular instance that the city's team was in unison. There is no, I don't think there's, this is as close as I've been involved in a process that the city team, from all the factors, have acted as a team, as a single voice. It's not internal, this is not an internal city problem. This is
I'm
working
sure you're
through.
going to have further opportunity to stress that point. Mr. Wax.
Well, the best way to make that point then is to say, in fact, where the problem does lie. And I think candor is more important than coyness in this, because it all comes out in the end anyway, and we can avoid some of the things that have been raised if we know up front just what the story is. So I would suggest candor. What is the role of former Commissioner Bratton in all this?
Mr. Bratton will be, because of his expertise in tracking systems, he will be involved in looking at primarily at the Teams 2 development. He's had experience in other organizations, and subsequent to leaving the police department in New York, has had experience in evaluating how tracking systems, the protocols, et cetera, to identify officers that need to be looked at further. So,
rumor has it that he is a likely candidate perhaps to become commissioner again if Mark Green becomes mayor of New York, which is also a distinct possibility. If he was to leave in less than a year from now because of that, where would we be on Teams 2, which has been one of the things that has held us back all along, and the lack of progress on that? Where are we on that?
well, as
I can't suggest that he will or won't, but it's enough, it's more than hypothecation. They've endorsed each other, and it's a political issue in New York, and there's some discussion that he would ask him to come back as the commissioner, and what would that do to his function?
I think we would have to look at some, the monitor would have to come to both us and the Department of Justice with a replacement for the... They have 2 people. Okay. And I guess they also have 2 people on there, Lee Curtis as well. But let me just say, but they will have to, this is a problem that we may face in any number of areas within the monitor. The turnover, you can't, there isn't indentured servants in the consulting business.
I know, but this is something you already have notice up front on.
However,
what are Kroll's connections with the military?
Can we add this into the list of questions?
But just the primary responsibility for getting teams 2 completed is ours, not the monitor.
Well, I know that, but based on our record, I think we need some help. What are Kroll's connections with the U.S. military in functions, in jobs that they've performed or for them recent times?
I haven't seen any. I have not. I will check our, I don't.
Yeah, I'd like.
It doesn't show up on the stuff I have, and it hasn't shown up in any discussions. Lots of prosecutions of organized crime and et cetera, but not.
Well, but you don't need this worldwide network they have to do organized crime in the United States. Well, you do to some degree, but in a different way.
I understand they're everywhere.
Okay, Mr. Holden.
This special committee, how long have you been working on trying to provide us with this inspector, with this monitor? How many months? Okay, anybody got a quick answer?
Since the first of the year, Councilman Holden.
6 months maybe, huh?
5.
All right, fine. And now we have to choose in one day. The day is Friday, and you're saying you want to go to the judge and say, this is it, and the decision's been made. But when you go to the judge and say the decision has not been made, would you say to them that the council is respectfully requesting additional time to review the process, number one, and also to look at those that have been recommended to be selected to become the monitors of this consent decree program, period? Would you say that to them? Because I'm going to vote in such a way where you will not have an opportunity to go there and say, we therefore now recommend that this is the group 1 and 2. A few more time ain't going to hurt us. Not at all, in my view. If it weren't for the other 4 people sitting here, I'd be concerned about Mr. Chaliff. And I tell you why. I just read in the paper yesterday about he and the Inspector General getting together behind the chief. I mean, and some of the members of the council have been a part of that, in my view. So is this going to be a monitor group that's going to go after the chief? If that's the case, I got a problem with it. And if he's signing off on it, there's got to be some kind of an agenda which troubles me. That's just my opinion. So the commission, rightfully so, after reviewing those counts against the chief, discounted them all. So, but you guys had to have him, and as long as you do, I'm just going to question what you're recommending to us. My goal is to make sure that this city is safe. We have the toughest chief on crime that we can find, and we already have him. I'm not going to sit back and let Chaliff or anybody else run him out of office.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. I wasn't aware Mr. Chaliff held any official position that enabled him to do that. Mr. Ridley Thomas, did you need to ask some questions before I have them try to respond to all these questions?
Madam President, I would wish to follow up on the comments that I made on, I suspect it was Wednesday?
I think Mr. Holden was not present for the previous discussions. This is not, in fact, coming in at the last minute out of nowhere. Go ahead.
And that was to present options in lieu of accepting or adopting the recommendations that are before us. I would like a presentation specifically on what the alternative would be to proceeding. I did make that request earlier this week, and I would like for us to hear how we would proceed. The second point related to the entirety of the discussion is it would be useful if we could learn more than what is presented to us by way of a summary and a two-page document here about the demographics traditionally defined of the respective teams in terms of their composition. I think that's a useful insight from which we could all benefit. Fully defined demographics. Madam President.
Thank you. Okay, that's everybody who wants to, the rest of the ones up here are people who've already spoken who want to go on with the discussion. So we need, if I've been keeping as good track as you have, which I probably have not, we need first of all to respond to the question of what happens if the council does not act today, and what happens, council members, we'll wait.
President.
Why don't you take that one while they're deciding the answers to the other one? Go ahead.
President and members, thank you very much, Tim McCosker. The reason why Monday is a date of significance is because following the council's decision on the consent decree, it was filed with the court. After being lodged with the court did not enter the consent decree, as you recall, and the court looked to the parties to come back with a mutual recommendation for the monitor so that the court would have some comfort in who the monitor team would be.
Emphasize mutual recommendation.
Mutual recommendation from the Department of Justice and from the city. And then so we engaged in that process following the council's action back in December to create this interview process. And it was just at the end of last month that the court issued an order to the parties, a minute order to each DOJ and to the city, asking us to come back with a status report on where we were in the process. And that status report was due on May 1st. On May 1st, the city and the DOJ mutually, together, responded to the court that we had conducted interviews, had conducted second interviews, we were continuing to work on the process, and that we expected to have the process complete by the 21st, which is Monday. And we had an opportunity to come before the council and describe that minute order and to describe our proposed response to the court. That was filed and received by the court. So the court's expectation is that we would have a report back to it on Monday with the recommendation that we've made to the council's action for the court then to review what the parties have mutually done as far as the proposed selection so that the court could then enter the consent decree.
Okay, is this a fair paraphrase, however, that if the council does not act today, the status we're at this moment is that the Department of Justice and our negotiating team for the city have reached an agreement about what they would recommend to the judge. And the situation is whether the council is going to endorse that recommendation of the Justice Department and our negotiating team or do something else.
If the council did not act, I think it would be most prudent for the DOJ and the city, although we haven't talked to the DOJ about this alternative, to report back to the court and let the court know exactly as you've described that the two teams have come to a mutual recommendation.
But the council has not.
But the council has
Yeah.
considered it, and then we would describe whatever happens
I
today.
just want to ask my colleagues to consider the headlines that are going to come out over that one. All right. Now, you were going to describe at Ms. Mizikowski and Mr. Feuer's and Mr. Hernandez's and Mr. Wax's request and Ms. Walters, you were going to talk a little about it's okay, I'll wait.
I'm sorry. Can I follow up, though, on that response?
Certainly.
I have not discussed, and our team has not discussed with the Department of Justice
Right.
what their response
No,
would be.
you did say that.
So they would have an opportunity then to report to the court anything they wanted to report. And while I don't want to put any words in the Department of Justice's mouth,
No, don't
they
do
may
that.
feel uncertain about what
Well,
the likelihood of coming to a mutual selection.
Okay. Yeah, don't put words in their mouth. What I just wanted to clarify here, as several people asked, is where we are, and you've done that. We have to do a status report to the court on Monday, whatever the status is. And
Because
we
we've
just wanted
committed
to
to do
be
that,
sure what the status is. Okay. Now, would you like to talk some more about
Right.
how the teams arrived, how the negotiating team and the Department of Justice got to where we are today, and all the rest of
Right.
that stuff people asked?
If I might, before we
Please.
do that, to let each of the members of the team
Oh, yes,
speak
they
for
were each
themselves.
to say whether they did
And I would like them to do it both from their organizational perspective and their personal perspective.
Okay. Kelly, we'll start with you. We're going down the table here.
We interviewed every single person whose application we thought on the face satisfied the criteria of the RFP, so that we can initially engaged in, I believe, 19 interviews. We then narrowed it down. As we went through the selection process, in my mind, and I think the minds of the other team members based on our discussions, the criteria that we were looking at were those set forth in the consent decree. Those criteria are a reputation for integrity, even-handedness, and independence, experience as a law enforcement officer, expertise in law enforcement practices, or experience as a law enforcement practices monitor, an absence of bias, including any appearance of bias for or against the DOJ, the city, the department, or their officers or employees, and no personal involvement in the last 8 years, whether paid or unpaid, with a claim or lawsuit against the city or the department or any of their officers, agents, or employees, unless waived by the parties. These were the criteria that we used to evaluate the candidates. On the basis of these criteria, both Kroll and Ginger satisfy. Michael Tchaikovsky is the individual who will be the primary monitor for Kroll. This is a man who was an assistant U.S. attorney in New York. He was a very aggressive prosecutor. He is very tough-minded. He is also fair-minded, and he impressed us with his maturity and his thoughtfulness in the interview process. He has experience in monitoring. While there's only 3 of these particular types of lawsuits in the country, and he is not the monitor on any of those 3, the kinds of monitoring experiences he's had, in particular, the Teamsters being one, which is a different kind of animal, it's an election, but the one where it was, I think, relevant is his monitoring of a consent decree dealing with the karting industry in New Jersey, and for those of us Soprano fans, we get a sense of what that business is like. He had to monitor that consent decree, which was similar, I think, not that I want to make the analogy to the LAPD, but similar in the sense of that the consent decrees deal with complicated businesses that were ongoing, as opposed to an election, which is sort of a one-time kind of experience, and I appreciate the councilwoman's distinction that she was drawing. He brought to the table those experiences that we thought were important. Jim Ginger brought to the table an incredible background, having done this now in 3 other places. Going through the negotiations, going through the complexity of the consent decree. This is the largest police department in the country that has ever had a consent decree like this. There are lessons that have been learned in Pittsburgh and New Jersey and Steubenville in connection with monitoring, in connection with how to make this work to achieve the kind of changes that everybody wants to see in the Los Angeles Police Department. At the end of the day, if this is to be successful, this organization will have to change. And this is a change implementation process at its very core. And to do it in the most complex system without bringing to bear the experience of Jim Ginger in these other 3 places, I think personally, and I think the team felt, would have seriously left an important resource away from us and hurt our success. So that's how we ended up in this place. I think that it will be a challenging and difficult process moving forward. I don't think anybody thinks this will be easy, but I think at the end of the day, we have two very fair-minded people who are going to be tough, and that's what it's going to take.
Thank you. Tim McCosker for the City Attorney's Office, and as Ron asked, for myself as well. I concur with all of that. We conducted an interview of every firm that was responsive and a number of callback interviews. We were very cognizant of the fact that not only did we need to have a mutual recommendation within our team, but it was also very important for the court and for the process and for the document that you adopted that we have the mutual recommendation from the Department of Justice and from the city. And as we concluded all of the interviews, clearly Kroll and clearly the Public Management Group were extraordinary firms that had the capacity. What Kroll and the proposed lead monitor, Michael Cherkasky, brought to the table is exactly what the Mayor's Office and Ron have described, an expertise in dealing with consent decrees. Not a consent decree that involved pattern and practice, because there's actually very few pattern and practice consent decrees in the country. And for those pattern and practice consent decrees, there's actually been one firm so far that's been selected to conduct those either alone or with another firm in one circumstance, or with another party in another circumstance. Knowing that it was very important to utilize, very important for the protection of the city, and I think also beneficial to the Department of Justice, to utilize a procedure where we have a mutual recommendation and not one where we go to the court and have the, where we reach an impasse and we have the court just select, because I think that was something that was of concern to our client, the City Council and the Mayor. We had the opportunity to make a selection of Kroll, which had experience with similar consent decrees, had a depth of personnel, and had a strength and maturity and met the criteria that are spelled out in your document, the consent decree. But also we created an opportunity for the city to avail ourselves of Mr. Ginger's and the Public Resource Group's very particular expertise, and that is in working at the front end of the document and creating a methodology that would give the city comfort in knowing what was going to be compliance and what might be the the potential for default. We would know it at the front end, and it also created a comfort for the Department of Justice, because clearly Mr. Ginger and that firm is an entity that they have worked with over and over again. And so I will echo Mr. Deaton's comments that this is really a unified position of the city team before you.
Police Department. Oops. We got to get them in.
I won't echo many of the things that's been said, because I'm in agreement with a great deal of what's been said, or everything that's been said. One of the things that from my perspective, that caused Kroll and Ginger to both to rise to the levels 1 and 2 is the fact that, number one, Kroll, from my perspective, clearly understood the complexity of the task before them. That came through very clearly in discussing the consent decree, the requirements of the consent decree, and approaches to dealing with those requirements in the consent decree. They clearly understood the complexity. Even though Kroll, Dr. Cherkasky, did not have prior police consent decree experience, he does have 7 years of monitoring experience, which in a very complex circumstance, which I think provides him with the understanding and insight as to how to approach a consent decree in and of itself. The other things that I saw in both Kroll and Dr. Cherkasky and Dr. Ginger were the fact that they did not prejudge the police department. They are willing and very clearly going to approach the task in a very objective way, and that's very important to us. Also, willing to sit down and discuss and to make us aware of what will be the criteria for establishing compliance, and to willing to talk to us on to understand the management environment and also the environment in which police officers work in the city of Los Angeles. Those were very important factors to us in determining whether Kroll, in the form of the team that was presented, and Dr. Ginger, which one would be 1 or 2 was a very close call, but has been obviously stated, this was a mutual decision, one between the Department of Justice and the City of Los Angeles. And I agree that we have gotten the best out of both selections in that from Dr. Ginger, we have what we consider to be a very objective approach, again, to establishing criteria for compliance. There's one that it keeps us well informed, and also it involves us. And again, from Dr. Chakasky, he is a very mature, and appears to be a very strong and very objective individual.
Shayla.
Well, I come speaking personally, and then I guess I've had a couple of roles in this process. And now I guess I'm officially consultant to the City Council through the CLA. My view was that we had spent 6 months longer negotiating the consent decree, and we had to obtain a monitor that would ensure that that consent decree was enforced. We were fortunate to have many good candidates, and I think the selection of the two that we have recommended is not in any way intended to be a mark against any of the other candidates, because we had a lot of good candidates. But these candidates, I think, with experience and strength of their teams, I think rose to the top. Also, they all, and I don't think any of the candidates actually came with an agendas, but these two teams in particular had no agenda in relation to Los Angeles. I believe we all believe that they would ensure that this consent decree was enforced and enforced fairly without a personal agenda as to any particular part of the equation, whether it be the department or any of its officers, the city, or the Department of Justice. Additionally, as has been previously stated, the experience of the Kroll team, having done compliance consent decrees, and I personally did some background checking on them because I knew some of the lawyers involved in some of the matters in New York, and was told that they not only operated fairly, but they did it in a way that instilled confidence in everyone involved in the process, including the Teamsters, including the Long Island carding industry, the judge, the prosecutors that were involved, and all the parties. And there were many parties in both of those, so I felt that was important too. I think that also what was important was reaching a consensus with the Department of Justice so that whoever went into this job went in with everyone's support, so that when the person began to act, he would have everyone's support, and I think that was important. And I think we were fortunate that we arrived at a position where we didn't have a fight at the end over who the monitor was going to be. And adding Dr. Ginger to it gives us the added expertise, and he would be working with Kroll in setting up the compliance standards so that everyone from day one, once the compliance standards are established, understands what compliance means, and there won't be a fight 6 months or a year down as to we as a city are or not in compliance.
Okay, so I think we can fairly say that this is indeed a unified recommendation, and everybody has now acknowledged that. Anything more? I have 5 people who wish to be heard for the second time so far.
The question was asked if you did not at some point approve our recommendation, what we would do. And
what the consequences would be.
Well, the consequences, I think, I know.
Yeah, but I did.
I said Mr. McCosker.
And I think Ms. Chick did as well.
Right, Mr. McCosker, I think, outlined at some point that the judge, just in general, the consequence is the judge has indicated he's not going to sign the consent decree until there's a recommendation. We might find ourselves in a different process.
I think we'll find ourselves looking as if the council is holding up police reform. That's what I'm worried about. Yeah, you're on the list, Mr. Holden. Mr. Deegan's finishing.
I didn't say that.
Information.
You're on the list, too.
Yes. Are you on the list? That editorial remark you just made, was that on the list?
No.
Thank you so much.
That's the prerogative of having the microphone. Okay.
That was just a point of information.
Yeah.
In any event, I truly do not believe that the team that's before you would go, it would take a lengthy period of time for us to come up with a second alternative. We have gone through a process. We have lived up to that process, I think, been very careful within being advised by the city attorney when and where we could make any modifications at all, which were virtually none. And so I think we would be in a very difficult position. And that's why we're where we are.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Fewer. Just before I start your time, so far I have in the following order: Fewer, Misikowski, Hernandez, Holden, and Ridley Thomas. Go.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that some of the discussion we just had has been very important, and I agree with many of the points that have been made by the people at the table. Mr. Deaton, I thought, made perhaps the most significant point early on, which was it's vital that there be clearly understood ground rules, criteria against which our performance will be measured in advance, and that there be no dissent from that at the beginning, with a lot of specifics. And I think that that's right. I think that it represents the voice of experience on a team that has been through this before in other contexts, and so I appreciated that remark. I also agreed, as we've been going through a more expansive discussion about the qualifications of those who are part of the proposed team before us, that the experience of having participated in monitoring elsewhere is perhaps irreplaceable in this process, and obviously unique to, since there are so few such decrees out there, unique to a member of the team before us. One of the questions, notwithstanding those points though, one of the questions that I asked at the inception of this was, why not local participation? At least a couple people at the table have said to us that it's great to have an objective, fresh perspective be brought to an assessment of our performance. And there's a lot to be said for that. But that does not militate in favor of completely excluding any local component whatsoever. And unless there's something about the team that has not been revealed to us as I review it, there is no local participant of any kind. I'm troubled by that. And I don't have, by the way, a particular local participant in mind. But the principle that, as I said at the beginning, police reform, rebuilding the department, both of which are deeply intertwined, on my view, can proceed with the monitors from exclusively outside the jurisdiction of the city, a team which has to, of necessity, get up to speed not only on the rules of the consent decree or the actions that led up to it, but the culture of the department and so forth from scratch. That's very troubling. So I'm actually, Madam President, going to ask that one of my first questions now really be answered, because we've seen from the proposal before us that the team has the capacity to meld the best of more than one team together into one. The absence of a local component, I think, could be, if not devastating, a serious blow to effective monitoring here. Your reaction, please.
I'll just, the two proposals did not include that. They were not increased in their viability because they didn't. They just didn't have one. And if we looked at, and we tried to look at their qualifications as objectively as we could vis-a-vis the other proposals, and these stand, we believe, head and shoulders above the others.
No, but what you could have done, though, is to look to other proposals and identified people of strength within those teams, and at some point said, as you're doing here, the mixing and matching could include drawing from another source of strength in another proposer. And you've purposely chosen not to do that, obviously, and I wanted to understand better why that was. In other words, it's not enough, I think, to say these proposers didn't include a local component among them, and therefore we don't have one. We could say that's the beginning of the analysis, but we want a local component, and therefore, top two, we want to meld within your teams a local element.
Okay, your time is up and they're going to answer.
Well, it's not exactly the way we see the public management as melding into the Kroll approach. The Kroll stands on as the independent monitor, stands as its own as a proposal, and stands on its own as being the selection for the independent monitor. It was the city's team's desire to have, at the front end, a very close look at and work done on the criteria, So that's kind of an additive situation to, not to the Kroll proposal, but just to the independent monitor.
His question, though, is why did you determine that you should not, or did you determine, why did you not, what do you think about, what did you think about whether there should be somebody who does have local experience? And I think that we ought to be candid about that. Everybody's worried about whether anybody with local experience is going to be perceived as pro-police or anti-police, or pro-chief or anti-chief, or pro-something else. At least that's been my understanding.
Well, let me just say that...
You know, tell me what the team did.
Two things. One is that, obviously, any local involvement that looked like it was pro or anti-police, we wouldn't have agreed with. I'm not going to be... we would have not agreed with that. But local involvement, just because it was local involvement, didn't get included, it wasn't included by Kroll in their proposal. And we added on to, not the Kroll proposal, the contract with public management is a contract between us, DOJ, and Kroll. It is additive, not to the Kroll proposal, additive to the whole process. And so,
Yeah, you're just not getting to his question. Would you like to try?
What we looked to was these criteria, and local presence isn't in the consent decree criteria, because we didn't take that as our marching orders. What we took as our marching orders was absence of bias, police officer expertise, reputation for integrity, and even-handedness. That's what we took as our marching orders to put together. So we didn't say we need to go out and find local per se, because we didn't see that as our marching orders, or I didn't think we saw that as our marching orders. I mean, I don't know, the other team members can speak to that. So we were presented with proposals, and we said, okay, let's evaluate them based on this criteria as they came in, and that's what we did.
Okay, Ms. Mizikowski.
I appreciate the council's concern now about the issue of local involvement, but as was just indicated, local involvement was not a criteria that we, the council, put forward in the consent decree when we went forward. It may just have been, and I think it is the result, that as our team has gone through that criteria as measured by the applicants, the teams with local involvement didn't measure as high as the teams that they've selected. That's all. And it may have been that any local applicant had just another hurdle to go through to show that there was not only an absence of bias, but no appearance of bias or no personal involvement. How one would define personal involvement over the last 8 years in a lawsuit or action against or claim against the city or the department. So it seems to me that in some instances, a local applicant would have had just a higher hurdle or higher criteria to clear. I don't think it was who or where the claims came from. It was what they brought to the table. And I think as we are seeing here in the background from Kroll has and particularly the specific person, Mr. Cherkasky, who's going to be the primary monitor, has at least a kind of resume when he talks about having been in the DA's office, established a unit dedicated to monitoring police integrity. That says that that person has spent some time doing this along with the whole associate. I also particularly was impressed that Mr. Bratton had developed something similar to Teams 2, which is going to be one of the most important part of our consent decree measures. Members of the council, this team is before us today is essentially the same team that spent 6 months before the last 3 or 4 months negotiating with DOJ to the consent decree from very, very different perspectives, and in fact probably coming to that activity, some not at all wanting and willing to have a consent decree. When the council took their report and went through it line by line, the document that we all remember, we essentially ratified it. We discussed it, we had explanation, we understood it, but we didn't change it hardly at all. It's for that reason that I am relying again on this same team who spent really almost has spent the last year together, not probably liking each other very much when they first started, and I'm not sure how much they like each other today, but they have come together with a consensus, with a recommendation, and for that reason I am moving 13A, which says that the council approve the selection of Kroll and Associates as put forward, approve the selection of public management resources with Dr. Ginger to with a primary objective of providing the methodology and criteria by which the consent decree will be measured, authorize the execution of contracts that they will be brought forward, and direct the city attorney to notify the Central Court Judge Gary Feast that we have approved this selection. That is my motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Okay, Ms. Chick, you're up next.
Yes, I have been listening very carefully to both our negotiating team and the comments from around the circle here. You know, colleagues, I'm concerned if we don't go forward today, are we contemplating starting all over again and trying to, from whatever our perspectives are, put together the ideal monitoring team? I'm not sure that we can do better than the people that we've had negotiating and working on this for us. They're very representative of us. They know what our concerns are. But the reason that the local piece disturbs me is because many of the things in the consent decree are uniform, generic issues related to standards that we should be held to in law enforcement, that are standards for the LAPD and standards all across the nation. And I'm not sure they change because it's Los Angeles versus other cities. The other thing is, we have a police commission, we have a city council, we have, although I think we need to reevaluate them, community police advisory boards, we're going to have neighborhood councils. And all of these local entities are going to have a great deal to do with police reform and with the consent decree. They won't be the official monitors, but it's not the official monitors that's the only person that's weighing in. We will all be able to continue to express our point of view, to communicate with the monitors. So I'm not that concerned about not having the local piece. I think it would have been ideal, but obviously you couldn't come up with that. In terms of the demographics and the question that was asked, that question I don't believe has been appropriately answered. I seconded Councilmember Miskowski's motion. It's my inclination, but I think that issue, that problem, and that question on demographics needs to be answered before I'm comfortable to take a vote.
Okay, would somebody like to answer that?
Demographics on Kroll, basically not looking at just the upper level, one, except for white males, one female, and one African American. At the top level, at the top, not talking about below at the worker bee level, if you will, one African American and one female. I might point out that with rare exception, and there was one or two that were different, that was good. It was for bidding on a job with the City of Los Angeles. I think the team was surprised. But out of 19 firms, I would say that in this instance, that was clearly one of the better firms, and that will give you an idea of what. And in some cases, the so-called participation was suspect, shall we say, in terms of it looked good on the. That's another word.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez.
And I could understand why this negotiating team would think that looks good. You know, when I say that, Councilmember Miskowski made the statement that we set up the criteria, and it's a reminder that we're accountable for the actions we take. Some of the constituents in my district were here today, and they're talking about the credibility of the police department. I'm looking, again, this city has always had a district attorney and a city attorney and a police chief, and we're talking about the credibility of the police department with the community. What bothers me is I represent a community that doesn't feel they've been treated fairly by the police department. Whether that's true or not, I can just explain to you that now the Justice Department has threatened a lawsuit against the city in regards to this consent decree. Now, when I look at the background, and Mr. Deaton, you've put a lot of faith on Mr. Ginger. He was a police officer for 4 years?
Right.
What did he do between 1973 and 1986? Was he leading the civil rights movement? What was he doing then?
I think he's a professor in...
Well, you showed him as a professor from 1992 to 2001. There's a big gap on this resume.
Okay. I will find out. I don't think he was leading the civil rights movement, however.
And again, in looking at the team, which of these teams has a background on police abuse cases? Which members basically have established in your mind some expertise in trying to get to those potential abuses? I noticed Tom Frazier, and again, I know his reputation, but he had 28 years with the police department in San Jose. But Mr. Ginger has been a professor most of his life.
Well, his experience, and the reason that that I thought he was, I liked his proposal, was that he was is in fact the monitor for Pittsburgh. And when we were in the negotiations with the Department of Justice, trying to understand exactly how this thing was going to work, we were given copies of those reports that he had produced. I talked to Mr. Ginger during that process to get an idea of how the consent decree and how the monitoring process worked, and there were several comments in the process about how he was would oversee what Pittsburgh was doing.
Mr. Deaton,
I mean, I'm just saying that's...
Yeah, I want to put my question out there because I see the Council President. You know the district I represent.
Right.
You know that the Latino community is particularly the immigrant community, is dealing with an issue right now. There's sweeps, there's all these other things. I just want you to address to me why it is that you think these individuals will be able to address those questions and establish that credibility as independent monitors with that community.
I believe that both of these people, both the people on Kroll and the people on Ginger, if they saw the things, some of the things that were pointed out that was happening in Rampart, they are the kinds of people that would not rest until they were fixed. We would be in front of the court and the federal judge so quick and so hard that it would make our heads spin. I have absolutely no doubt that neither one of these people are going to tolerate any kind of aberrant behavior on our part. But what I think we have set up is a way for that to be done in a fair and equitable fashion, and I think that's why the police department is buying off on this, is there's a process. So they understand what it takes to comply with this consent decree. But I do not believe either one of these, and I have to tell you that just in the presentations that the command of the subject that Kroll had was incredibly impressive. No two ways about it. And I think he's used to working working, I should say, on jobs that involve organized crime and very difficult things. And I don't think and I'm not trying to, I don't want to in any way parallel that to the Los Angeles Police Department, but he's hard as nails. And I think Ginger is too. And I'm not worried about, I don't think anybody in this city should be worried about their objectivity and their willingness to get this job done. I think that we need to be sure that there is an objective approach to do that, and then we need to get our job done. And I think that this is the person or persons that are going to look over our shoulders for the federal judge. And if they're fair and they're hard, I think every citizen in Los Angeles will be better off, and I think that's who they are. And that's my personal take.
Mr. Pacheco, for the first time.
Great. I was reviewing the criteria because I believe there have been two issues raised that we are basically at a dead end, and that is local participation, or the issue that Councilmember Fuhr raised. And then we have the issue of demographics and participation by some of our more esteemed colleagues in the community who practice law either through private practice or through some sort of community-based organization. I'm not sure what we're going to resolve today, but I don't see a consensus here today. I am not comfortable moving forward today on any issue until we get some of this information returned to us. I'm not sure whether we have to dig below the top two to see what the demographics were for opportunities to satisfy the credibility issue, because we're going to have to balance that whole issue with the community. I'm sort of at a loss right now on this issue because there's some valid questions, but the criteria seem to maybe have set us up for this day when we didn't put a little better explanation as to what we meant by those individuals who have sued the city or the department, because that may have limited the options for some of our more civil rights-oriented lawyers, because they may have had that history or some pending cases. So it's just sort of interesting, the dilemma we face today with the information we have. So for today, I know that I would like to have an opportunity to review the information.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Council President Galanter.
I really want to urge us to adopt this recommendation and get on with it. I think that the questions that are being raised are good questions, but they've been raised before. They've been discussed with the team, our negotiating team. I think that Ms. Miskowski is right in going back to the consent decree, because let us remember that our job here is to get the consent decree in place. And I just want to remind you, we had a long and contentious debate about the consent decree. And one of the things that came up over and over again, and I would urge you not to forget about now, is that the main function of having a consent decree and of having a monitor is to be sure that everybody in the city feels that the process is fair and that the review is fair, so that we don't have people saying, for example, from the immigrant community's wants and needs are being neglected, because we have people who are there to make sure that the police behavior is correct in those situations. We don't want to have the police officers, we don't want to have the police chief, we don't want to have the mayor, whoever it turns out to be, we don't want to have the city council or anybody saying this person was biased. And everybody who has been involved in these issues for a long time does so with great conviction. We simply sometimes disagree here in the city, and this is America, we're allowed to do that. But for this process, we really have to have a team in place that we know is smart, dedicated, committed to being fair, and not bound by anybody's political agenda. They are being hired to carry out a contract to implement the consent decree, which is filed with the court, which the court signs off on. They're not being hired to get somebody hired or somebody fired. Their job is to make sure that the city, over the course of the next 5 years, does what we have committed to do. I just think it is going to send the worst possible message to everybody if we do not reach an agreement on this. We're going to wind up telling the court that the negotiating team, including the mayor's office, the legislative analyst, the city attorney, and the police department, and a former police commissioner, have reached agreement with the Justice Department, and the City Council is saying, well, no, we haven't made up our minds yet. We need, as the people said here this morning, we need to get on with this job. And if we put it off, we are going to look very bad indeed, and we're not going to be any closer to a solution. If we were really going to get closer to a solution, there might be an argument for it. But there aren't that many people who've done this kind of work. I don't know these people. I've certainly heard of Cherkasky. He had an excellent reputation in New York. He was always in the papers with very, the kind of press you would like to see if you were looking for an independent monitor. I don't know the other people, and I've never met Cherkasky, I've only read about him. But this is not going to be a good thing to drag out, and I would urge us to support the motion that's before us. Go to the court, let's get the show on the road.
Thank you, Madam President. The chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
Mr. Galanter, I just have to disagree with you, number one. Number two, with Mrs. Chick as well. This concept is not a boilerplate concept. When she speaks of universal standards that can be applied in a program like this in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in New York, across the board, not true. Mr. Hernandez has appropriately stated that you have a unique set of circumstances here in the city of Los Angeles. The diversity, people with different attitudes, behavior, and lifestyles. You just can't take a concept and say it applies here in the city of Los Angeles, the largest police department, where such a program is not being implemented. Now, I see nothing wrong. We may come to the same decision, the same conclusion you have, that you established behind closed doors, and we were shut out of the process. There's nothing wrong, and it's a reasonable request to say, all right, let's cross the T's and dot the I's and have a unanimous vote, only if we have a clear understanding what's before us and why. I've had contractors or proposals recommended to me before, after they were in closed session, but in open session, as Mr. Wax talked about before, they have come before us in public settings saying, here's why my team is the best team. What is wrong with that? That's a reasonable request, and I'm sure the court will understand it. It's not that we are against what is being attempted here today to have full compliance with the consent decree with the Justice Department signing off. That's fair, that's right. But what would you think if you say, let's approve this today, and the Police Protective League tomorrow is saying, I indict the process? We're the ones that are going to be scrutinized because we didn't even review that, or we were not even informed of it. And they may say, it's okay, it's a good idea. Not that we're seeking their opinion, but you are seeking ours. And I'm saying to you that, yes, it's important that we have somebody who's local, in my view. I mean, they're not going to be a dominant force on this team to influence the outcome. They would be just equal participants, and of a small minority. I am not prepared to give an aye vote today. And I'm saying that with that statement, I may be 100% in favor of what you're doing once I know why you came to this conclusion and how you came to this conclusion behind closed doors that you've been negotiating for 6 months. It took you 6 months, you want us to take 1 week. Well, I'm not about to vote on that as such.
Perfect timing. Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Oh, I went over by 2 seconds.
Well, we'll take it off the next one. Go ahead.
Madam President, members of the council, I rise to urge a no vote with respect to the motion being offered by Ms. Misakowski. I do so having listened to this debate with some care and also concerned about how we've arrived at this very place. And what we are ultimately being asked to do is to move the process forward and do it from the vantage point of deference. I do not think we can defer. This issue, this matter, is too large. It is at the heart of what quality of life for many of the residents of this city must contend with on a daily basis. And I feel very strongly that the City Council itself, duly elected, functions autonomously in the context of checks and balances has to own the process of not simply the consent decree itself, but police reform in its totality. And to make a decision of this import at this time in the process only causes us to effectively punt. And I'm not willing to do that. I think much more work has to be done, and we have to stand up to it and not simply say that a group that has worked very diligently, they would have us believe. I'm not prepared to contradict that, but that work ought to have included the body itself in such a way that we take responsibility for what is going to happen. Seems to me that's why we're elected, and to do anything otherwise in this instance would, in my view, contradict the very reason why I felt it important to be a part of this body in the first instance. Madam President.
Ms. Chick.
I guess I want to ask my colleagues that are not comfortable going forward today, because I have decided that I am going to vote to go forward today, what they see still needs to be done either in process and substance, not either, but in process and substance. I think I'm correct in hearing there's concerns that there's not local representatives from the LA area on the team, and concerns about a more diverse group, upper level as well as lower. And that would make the monitoring team more ideal, I agree. But I'm left with not understanding if we don't go forward today, and I am comfortable that this is a good team that's being recommended, but that if we don't go forward today, then what? And I think what I heard from the team is then what is the judge decides. Am I correct on that?
No, I could not predict for you the then what. We would have to sit down with the Department of Justice and inform them what had happened, and we will be reporting back to the court, but I can't predict what the court's response would be.
Right, and also, if we're not going to go forward today, I certainly think we want to help shape what the team is going to say to the judge. Are we holding it for a week? Are we holding it for 2 weeks? What are we asking for differently? What are we going to do differently? I also, before I finish, want to make sure I was clear in what I said before about the local representative. I don't think it's a necessary requirement. I think that our police commission, the council, and others are very, very qualified to bring forward any unique issues that are only about Los Angeles. I would like to be reassured that this team is very interested, the Monitor, in working with local entities and hearing from local entities. And I think I've heard that the Monitor in Pittsburgh, for instance, is working very closely with ACLU and others. But that's where the local voices come in, is working with the Monitor. I don't necessarily think that's an absolute requirement. At any rate, if one of my colleagues would perhaps express what they think should happen differently, I'm not sure it changes my vote, but I think it's important for all of us to
Could I just point out one thing? One other thing with respect to local participation that I think carries on with your point is that the judge has granted several, half a dozen or so, local organizations and folks amicus status in this case, who that status allows them to file papers before the judge. The Monitor's reports, the Monitor's quarterly reports, will be widely disseminated and available, and the judge is going to have a hearing on the amicus briefs as promised. So that component does exist.
Thank you. Mr. Wax.
Well, I sort of have mixed feelings. First, I really do disagree with Ms. Galanter and others on, we have to do this today because we have to do this today. That's nonsense. I think Mr. Ridley Thomas is right, and others, Mr. Hernandez, and things that I've been saying. We do this. If we have a responsibility, then we have to fulfill it, and we need the time and the resources and all to do that. And I think this process should have been more inclusive and open in that respect. I've been saying that all along, and I don't care what and I think a judge would disrespect a council that didn't spend the time it needed to come up with a thoughtful recommendation, rather than one that just did it because there's some kind of arbitrary deadline. That said, I must say I'm feeling very comfortable about the recommendation that that has now been presented to us, and the only way I wouldn't vote for it is if I hear things that make me question the wisdom of the recommendation. What I've heard so far is that, except for the seeming potential involvement with former Commissioner Bratton, who I sort of see as more of a political animal who might go back into the political field, and if anything, what we don't want in a monitor is a politicized type of presence. You really want more of the quiet, independent persons. But other than that one aspect, I think that the remarkable combination of qualifications of both of the teams is extraordinary, and I don't want to mess that up with a process that starts us down the merry old way of each of us sort of somehow recommending some friends to get in as a part of the action. And I'm afraid we'll do that if we get into the local type of thing. I'm fearful of that. I always watch this process where we start with something and everyone's kind of got to get somebody involved in it and get a little piece of the action and all that. And that is not what we need. What we need, it's not only fairness. We have a consent decree for one reason and one reason only, to make sure that we do as we promised. And hopefully, someone who, if we're not able to achieve that, can help us do that so we stay on target. We wouldn't need a consent decree if we didn't have a history of not doing what we agreed to do. And we can all blame each other for why it isn't done. The mayor, the council, the commission, the chief, the nature of the system. I've never believed change would come voluntarily, and I've never believed it would come from within because of the nature of the system. And that we do need someone to make sure we, meaning now all of us, the department, the commission, the mayor, the council, everyone, does as we promised. And I want them to be objective. I want them to be knowledgeable. I want them to give us the help and the skills that we need to come to that. And I want us more than anything to keep our promise. That's all I want out of this. And anything that gets in the way of that will be harmful ultimately to bringing about real reform in the system. Anything that gets in the way about that would be harmful. So my comfort level is only to make sure that this combination of, the combination of resources that we need to make sure that we do what we said we would do, and hopefully we said we did what we would do because we believed it had to be done and that it was the right thing to do. And anything else gets in the way of that will only take us off track from that and take us off course. So I'm comfortable with this, with that one caveat, and that's only a premonition because I don't know Mr. Bratton. I've never met him. I don't know his political plans, but I am aware of the nature of his past and the battles with Giuliani and the involvement in the current election and all of that, and the likelihood that perhaps he might go back, and we'll need to take that into account. That said, the two organizations as a whole have a remarkable amount of expertise, and I would be willing to entertain someone else if you can show me that they have comparable backgrounds in it. But I don't want them in for inessential reasons, because those will get us into a path that we don't want to go on this one.
Ms. Walters. Ms. Walters has moved the previous question, and everyone else who has signed up to speak has already spoken at least twice. Yeah. So let us...
I'd like to ask for no on the previous question.
All right,
no,
we are about to vote on the previous question.
No,
open the roll.
No.
Well, people who have spoken, as long as everybody who wants to speak has spoken at least twice, it's a legitimate motion.
Right.
So there are people who want to speak for the third time, yes. Okay, open the roll on previous question. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
4 ayes, 8 noes.
Well, I guess we lost. Okay. Ms. Walters, did you move the previous question? Mr. Fewer is next. Mr. Fewer passes. Mr. Hernandez is next.
Madam Chair, members of council, thank you for this opportunity. One, I need to state that I was moved by Mr. Deaton's comments, and I thought they were important because the question had to be asked from my perspective. And at the same time, the realization hits me that this is our real first public notice of who is the nominating or who the negotiating committee is recommending. I personally have concerns that we're again taking an action without really an opportunity for anybody else to participate. And I would think that hopefully the judge would understand the difficulty of the council because of the seriousness and the responsibility that we are looking at. I would ask that instead of taking a vote, we basically stay the motions before us for 1 week. If we stayed it for 1 week, what it would do is give an opportunity for some public exposure and give each and every one of us an opportunity to do our own research. And so the proposal I would have is that the city attorney represent to the judge on Monday that, one, we were notified today of who the selection is, and the council would like there to be some public airing of that selection, and would ask for 1 week to make its decision. Once we make our decision, we're locked into next move of signing a contract. But if there was some real reservations about the parties that are before us, I think they would come out within that 1 week. And that would be my motion at this time. Hopefully I could get a second to that, but it'll allow for some time to hear from some of the other parties who've continued to monitor our process.
Mr. Pacheco, were you seconding it? I saw you waving your hand there. Okay, Ms. Mizikowski.
1 week.
I'm sorry. Wait, hold on 1 second before I start your time. Somebody was waving here. Did you want to comment?
No, I didn't. I wasn't waving, but if I could just ask for clarification. So the direction then would be go back to the court on the time that we said we'd go back to say that the city's team and the DOJ had a mutual recommendation. We went to the city council. The city council debated it today, but wants a
Wants to
period
give
of
the
time.
public a chance to, is that right? Wants to give the public a chance to comment if the public wants to comment.
And if I could just describe, because I've given very brief answers to the same question a couple of times, what are the alternatives or what could happen? We understand that the Department of Justice can make their own statement on Monday.
Right.
And I won't speak for them. And also the court has as its option, it can say no,
Anything.
it can also enter the consent decree and invoke some other procedure for the selection.
Or refuse to enter
Or-
the consent decree.
Or refuse to enter the
Okay.
consent decree.
Okay.
Well, if the court enters the consent decree, it could then invoke the provisions where it asks us for names and then it picks.
Point of
The court picks.
information.
Oh,
Point of information.
yes, okay.
Do we have a signed binding consent decree?
No, that was the statement I made. We do not have the consent decree entered yet.
So the rules under the consent decree aren't in place yet?
That's correct.
Correct.
So the judge can do whatever he wants regardless of the consent decree?
No, my point was that because we have signed the document, we have a contract with the Department of Justice, and we've submitted it to the court has at any time the opportunity, the ability to enter the consent decree and then begin enforcing its provisions.
Okay, and you were up next anyway. Is that what you were? Okay. Cindy, all right, Cindy, you're on.
I'm going to pass just for the exception to add that the motion moved that the city council is subject to the approval of the mayor. That needs to be in there. And I think Mr. McCosker essentially just indicated my concern that for those who want more time, this goes Monday, if we don't say that this is what we want, to the judge, where we may have no more time and the judge may take it over. I, again, stand by the recommendation. I think it's a good one by the staff, collective staff. I think we have an impressive array of people to be helping us be as monitor and would ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Ridley Thomas.
I think Mr. Wax makes a compelling point about why he recognizes this decision to be as significant as it is, and why he registered strong unreadiness up to this point, and the point at which he resonates with the concerns raised by any number of us about this decision. And he makes the point that the process oughtn't be tainted or polluted by local interference. And in addition to that, the concern about what must ultimately be delivered to the citizenry of Los Angeles, much of which I agree. It is simply not a question of either or. All local, no outside, all outside, no local. I reject that. I'm not even prepared to advocate for any entity as such. That isn't the upshot of my point of concern. My point is that the one entity that ought to know what it is doing and not defer in this hour is the Los Angeles City Council. Not to have more understanding, more resolve as to whether or not this is ultimately the message that we want to deliver seems to me to be something that we should not do today. Now, I feel very strongly that we should be in a position to answer each of these questions with far more intelligence and capacity than I think is the case right now. That's my issue. That's my concern. And we know that these issues of demographics are not irrelevant in terms of who's driving this discussion. We know it wasn't when we talked about the issue of police abuse and the long-standing, predictable victims of that and how that has evolved over the period of time that many of us have been on this council itself. It seems to me, Mr. Wax, that your point is most potently made when, in fact, you realize that the bottom line for us is this: the credibility of the decisions we make and the extent to which the people of this city have confidence in law enforcement. And we have to, it would seem to me, be a part of an effort to restore public confidence in the Los Angeles Police Department. Decisions that essentially say the 11th hour is what we get information, and we make a major decision about that information without making an investment in the process and owning it. They do no more than have a corrosive effect on the credibility that I think we all wish to have and the way in which we wish to communicate that the people of this city ought to be able to have confidence in the way that we have made such an important decision, and then be able to feel much better about the men and women of the Los Angeles Police Department as they go about their very important responsibilities and duties. That is in part what I think is riding here, and I wish to restate my concern that it would be unwise for us to vote for this. Thank you, Madam President.
All right. I would just like to state for the record that I do feel comfortable taking responsibility for voting for this recommendation, and I appreciate that others may feel they do not have enough information. I would just like to say on the record I feel comfortable. Ms. Walters is next, followed by Mr. Pacheco, and maybe one day we'll get to a vote. Ms. Walters.
You'll get there sooner with my statement than later, because I'm not going to take the whole time to do this. I've listened to my colleagues and the concerns for delaying this over until some other time. I am concerned that a delay does not sit well with the court. And I would rather submit a decision that we had some party and had some opportunity to discuss it, rather than a court to hand down an order about which we had nothing to say. So I'm prepared to vote for this today, and I hope that we will have enough votes to send it on to the court on Monday.
Thank you. Mr. Pacheco.
Madam President, colleagues, for those of you supporting the recommendation, I believe that this is a no-lose situation from your viewpoint based on this perspective. I have gone before many courts and many judges before and argued many positions, and the judge has told me, obviously this when I was a former prosecutor, that my position was not reasonable and that he would impose his decision. So I don't take it personal, and I don't take offense to it that I may have an unreasonable position. So if at the end of the day, the judge feels that asking for a week of time to digest and work this information out, he finds it's unreasonable, I don't take it personal. He has a difference of opinion. And if the team feels that their arguments and their position have substance, and the Department of Justice is going to support those positions with some substantive arguments, then the judge will have something to hang his hat on when he decides to impose this team on the City of Los Angeles. So I have nothing to lose by asking for a week and everything to gain in terms of getting some more information. If the merits of the presentation are really that strong, then I don't have a problem with the judge saying, you're being unreasonable by asking for a week to get more information or to incorporate other individuals. But if the merits are not that strong, then maybe there's something else to be looking, that we should be looking at. So I think I have everything to gain by asking for a week and nothing to lose if it turns out that my request was unreasonable, because I don't take it personal. If the judge feels that the information is strong enough to make a decision, he'll make a decision. I'll live with it. We have hundreds of more decisions to get through in this process. This is just one. I know it's an important one, but I have a team of people here who feel very strongly about their position, and I know the Department of Justice, I'm sure, feels equally strongly. I'm simply asking for some time, and I believe that we at least should ask.
Okay, thank you. We are going to take Mr. Hernandez's motion first, which is to ask for a week continuance, and after we deal with that, we'll see what happens. So open the roll on whether to continue. This is a motion excuse me? This is the motion to continue it for a week, to ask the court to give us another week. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
4 ayes, 8 noes.
All right, that was not approved. So the motion before us now is Ms. Mizikowski's motion as amended to put in the part about the approval of the mayor. Open the roll on that motion, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 5 noes.
That is not approved. So that will carry over till Tuesday.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry. Ms.
I'd like to change my vote. The part of the motion that I heard was to whether or not to have the mayor inserted in here.
I'm sorry. Let me clarify. That was my fault. I believe, and Ms. Mizikowski, you may have to clarify, I believe that it's the standard language, is it not? Or you clarify?
We drafted the motion incorrectly. The consent decree requires the mayor and the council to approve this, and so it's following the procedure of the consent decree.
All right.
So
I do
would you
not want this continued, and I do
Okay,
not want any
then
vote.
what you need to do is move to reconsider. We'll open the roll on reconsideration, and we'll vote it again
I
with
move
that.
to reconsider.
Okay, open the roll on reconsidering. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, it's back before us. Now, say it again so we're all clear on the record. You drafted the motion incorrectly the first time, the correct version to conform with the consent decree.
The consent decree says the city acts through the city council
So-
and the mayor, and the selection of the independent
Must
monitor
be
is
done the
by the
same
city and the DOJ, and so it requires both.
Okay, open the roll on the corrected motion. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 3 noes.
All right, that is approved forthwith. And thank you to the members of the public who sat through it all. We appreciate your interest here. All right, do not leave, members of the council. Do not get too excited here. We have an agenda. Let me remind you, we have the rest of our agenda before us. Members of the council, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the council, what remains on
Items
our
number
agenda?
4 through 10 on the regular agenda are items for which public hearings have not been held.
All right.
Item number 6C has a substitute motion that has been distributed.
All right, we're going to assume the substitute motion. I do not have cards on any of those items. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to be heard on items 4 through 10? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Open the roll on items 4 through 10 with the substitute motion for 6C. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved. Forthwith on 7.
Item number
12:20.
12 is before you. There is an ordinance.
All right, item number 12, do we still have 12 people here? Fewer? Okay. Item number 12, we have held a public hearing. We have one person. Are you sure we have a quorum here? Okay. No, I know you're here. Okay, item number 12, we have already had a hearing. Does anybody wish to have another hearing, which requires a motion? We have one person who wishes to be heard. Seeing no motions, hearing no motions, open the roll on item 12. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Forthwith, yes, thank you. Anything else?
Yes, there is a motion that has been submitted, a resolution, Ms. Kowski-Galanter.
Oh, that one, yes.
Findings
We do
need to
have
be made.
Special one, Ms. Weingart?
Yes, thank you very much. This is a motion that has to do with Prop 34, which is in the legislature at the moment. It is SB 34, interestingly enough, by Burton, and it was, yesterday it was amended to change it, which would possibly preempt our local ordinance, and therefore the council need to make the findings that the need to act arose after the posting of the agenda, and there's an immediate need to act. And by the way, I failed to mention that there's a hearing on Monday.
That would seem to affect things. Okay, open the roll on the findings. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
The findings are approved. The matter is now before us. Ms. Mizikowski.
A little more clarification.
Wait, the mic's not on.
This is an issue where the state bill would preempt what the council just did 2 weeks ago on disclosure, requiring disclosure by entities of who is supporting independently any candidate for any race. The state bill would come in and split the difference, saying that partisan parties would have to disclose, but others would not, other independent expenditure groups. And I think the council was clear, we wanted everybody to disclose, it should, and so I think we should have a position in opposition to this bill.
Mr. Wax.
I obviously support Ms. Mizikowski's motion and indicate that the state legislation we're concerned with only gives further credence to the view that they knew exactly what they were doing in the first place. That said, we're going to have to, at a later date, address the whole issue of how our current ethics laws now and our current campaign contribution restrictions are actually in the context of Prop 34 as it's now being implemented, and in the future, ours are actually creating the exact opposite results that they were intended. It's going to stifle competition. It is going to give advantage to the few. It's going to, for all practical purposes, eliminate nonpartisan local government in the way that we've had it, and it certainly was never the intention. But in the context of where Prop 34 has taken us to and what you can see happening for the future, that's going to be the unwitting effect, and we're going to have to look at all of our laws again in that context. But in the meanwhile, I clearly support Ms. Mizikowski's motion, and I really do believe that the Prop 34 loopholes that none of us foresaw were in fact carefully drafted and intended to have the exact effect they have. And this failure to even go along with just disclosure only gives credence to that.
Okay, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved forthwith on that, and then some. Okay, that should bring us to public comment. This is the time for comments from members of the public on items within the council's purview, but not on today's agenda.
Madam Chair.
Sir.
President, may I move number 9 forthwith? Thank you.
Yes, you may. Number 9 forthwith. Mr. Zabeda, followed by Roy Hefner and Ms. Gutierrez.
Yes, here we are, 2001. The results of our census just came out. It says that Latinos are a majority in this city, but yet we have problems of communication. We come before this council and there is not translation available. And what does that do to our people? If they come to a place where people do not speak their language, even though they live here, they pay taxes here, even if they are citizens here that do not speak English, and there are a lot of them, they could not, this institution is not open to them. We're not made welcome. And I feel, as do many of the people that our organization represents, that this council needs to take note of that and open up these hearings to the largest group, at least in the city. And also to another aspect of this lack of communication is with regard to these neighborhood councils that are being, using the vernacular, bogarted by a lot of business interest, English-speaking or Anglo businesses, and excluding. I was just talking to another person right here who was here who spoke earlier from Highland Park, and it's another concern that's been raised to me by other people within the city about the neighborhood neighborhood council development process. It's being closed off to Spanish-speaking people, to immigrants. And this council needs to take note of that. This is 2001. Wake up and smell the frijoles.
Thank you. Let me just tell you, I did have somebody come down here earlier because I thought, I completely agree with you that we need to have translation services available. We have since let her go back to her office, but there was somebody here earlier. Hold on, wait, just let me finish. I also was informed today that in the budget we will be voting on Monday, they have finally put in the resources necessary so that we can get, I don't know exactly what the form will be, but so that we will in fact have translation services available. So I just want to inform you of that. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. I just got the word this morning that they did finally put the money in. Mr. Hefner.
Roy Hefner from the community of Westchester, California, chairman of the Los Angeles International Airport Area Advisory Committee, the official committee that has been appointed by the Board of Airport Commissioners. I happen to have jury duty across the street today and could not avoid coming over to sit in on this august body that I watch on Channel 35 quite often. My comment is very short and very brief. I think some of you might already anticipate it, and that is the master plan for the Los Angeles International Airport. Public comment is coming up to a close on July the 25th. However, oral comment is going to be taken in 3 locations on June the 9th. As a member of that committee, we have certainly encouraged the council to try to encourage the Board of Airport Commissioners to space those out a little better so that there could be a better opportunity to present the point of view. As you know, in most of those hearings, you have about 2 minutes to do your thing. The one last point, as I know you're extremely tired today, one last point is that when you go through, and I know all of you have the executive summary of the master plan before you in your office or somewhere, please look at the summary of the summary and then just do some simple mathematical figuring and see how come we can go ahead and have one figure for the number of operations in one day and another figure for the number of operations in a year and have them not match out to reach the 365. For those of you that will not be here when this comes before the council, I certainly hope as citizens that you will still continue to take an interest in that. For those of you that will be here on the council, I want to urge your support to the communities that surround the airport as to what their concerns are and the best way to resolve them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Anita Gutierrez. Anita Gutierrez.
Estoy esperando a que llegue el señor Mike Hernández porque son unas preguntas que le voy a hacer a él, que de la casa la casa que abrió usted cuando mataron a mi hijo de la comunidad, que hasta la fecha está cerrada. Y quiero saber qué es lo que va a pasar con esa casa.
Let me translate. Ms. Gutierrez is inquiring of Councilman Mike Hernandez. There is a house that's on East Lake Street that was opened after her son was killed. It's called the Unity House, and it has been closed for quite a while now. And she wants to know what is going to happen to that house because it's a resource in the community.
También quería preguntarle otra cosa. Él dio un dinero a un padre modesto. El padre modesto se lo robó. Salió en el periódico. Y es lo que le quiero preguntar también de ese dinero. ¿Por qué se lo dio a él?
The other question is, there was a person that was in charge of the house, a Mr. or Father or Brother Modesto, and there was an article in the LA Times documenting some of the misplacement or loss or theft of monies by this Brother Modesto, and she wants to know what happened and what happened to Mr. Modesto.
Y es lo último que voy a decir, que por qué usted dijo que era un cholo menos que habían matado, que porque era un cholo muy peligroso de 14 años, a usted se le hace un cholo peligroso y el oficial darle 6 balazos en su espalda.
Okay, Ms. Gutierrez asked also of Councilman Mike Hernandez why he said that when her son was killed, that it was one gang member less, and that does he feel that a 14-year-old child deserves to be shot in the back with 6 bullets, and that why did he agree with the police on that?
Cuando el otro señor, Richard Alatorre, también habló, dijo que la señora, la familia Gutiérrez estaba estúpida si creíamos que nosotros le íbamos a ganar a policía, pues nunca le vamos a ganar, porque con puras mentiras, ¿cuándo vamos a ganar? Puras mentiras que los oficiales dicen. Ahora quiero yo saber por qué un oficial se salió, el que andaba con el oficial que mató a mi hijo, ¿por qué se salió ya de policía?
She wants to know too about the comments made by Mr. Alatorre. If I guess she's implying that Mr. Hernandez might have been party to those, and Mr. Alatorre said that the Gutierrez family are crazy if they think they're going to beat the LAPD. And why did the reserve officer that was in the car where Mr. Falvo was driving, what happened to him? Why did he drop out? And is anything being done about that? Okay,
Y eso se lo dejo en su conciencia a usted, al alcalde, al Garceri que salió y al jefe de policía, porque ustedes perfectamente saben qué clase de policía mató a mi hijo.
And Ms. Gutierrez further states that she leaves that to your conscience, Mr. Hernandez, to the police chief, to Mr. Garcetti, because you know what kind of an officer Mr. Falvo was. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Clerk?
Motions for posting and referral.
Without objection, so ordered.
Council members request to be excused from council attendance. Councilmember Miskowski requests to be excused on May 25th to leave at noon. A motion is required.
Okay, Mr. Ridley Thomas moves. Without objection, so ordered.
Councilmember Padilla requests to be excused on Tuesday, May 29th and Wednesday, May 30th for personal business. A motion is required.
Mr. Wax moves. Without objection, so ordered.
The desk is clear.
Very good. Do we have any adjourning motions, colleagues? Adjourning motions? Yes, we do. Would the audience please rise? Chair recognizes Councilman Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually just news walked into me by my staff. Request that the council adjourn in memory of Isaura Chavez, mother of Jorge Lara, who's the director of the Pacoima Urban Village, very active community-based organization in the 7th Council District. Isaura was born in Jalisco, Mexico, the third of 14 brothers and sisters who came to the United States in 1974, and certainly not only instilled in them the values of education, respect, and community service, but it is obviously very evident through their community involvement in the Valley and throughout the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you. Are there any other adjourning motions? Councilwoman Chick?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to ask that we adjourn in memory of Dwayne Pasica and Steve Horan. These were 2 men. They happened to be very good friends who worked together at a company in Tarzana, a company named Body Coat Hinderleiter. It's a firm that does heat treating and brazing of metal. And first, Mr. Horan saw that his friend was in trouble. There were gaseous fumes, and he had fallen into a dangerous area. He tried to rescue his friend and tragically also became a victim and both men died of asphyxiation. Mr. Haran, 36-year-old, is a father of 3 children. Mr. Pasica, 43, is the father of 2. Neighbors, friends, and co-workers all are in a state of shock, and we'll miss both of them very much.
Are there any other adjourning motions? Are there any announcements by council members? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll? Seeing no further business before the council is adjourned. Have a good weekend, everyone.